Hey guys, tonight we will go through a small street behind Warsaw's Kino Morano that is not very brightly lit. Rainy drops tap on dusty windows as you pull the collar of your coat up higher. The autumn of 100939 tastes like damp charcoal and boiled cabbage. If you breathe too deeply, you will probably not survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Please write your city and local time in the comments so I can see how far these echoes reach. Now, turn off the bright lights. You could turn on a fan to make a soft background hum. Let's start tonight's journey gently. You open a gate into a courtyard. The gate makes a loud noise, and two pigeons that were sleeping on it fly away. There's a smell of wet soot, and the vodka from yesterday is still in the air. Warsaw's half-asleep shops sell uneven cakes and old newspapers, but the real stories are found on the streets. Armies are getting ready for war, countries are on the brink of war, and certain underground rooms are now very popular with men in uniform. Your boots splash across puddles that reflect the street lamps. Each ripple takes away one more part of normal life. Inside a small flat above the cobblers, women gather around a coal stove. The ceiling is cracked and covered in steam. They talk of mobile houses of relaxation. It's a phrase that sounds nice, but it's actually about something very different. Here is some mainstream fact time. In early September 1939, not long after German troops had crossed the Vistula, officials in charge of the occupied areas gave instructions to set up military brothels that would be run by the army. Everyone in the room knows what that really means, even if nobody uses the word prostitution. A woman named Anna is wearing a chipped cameo and says that her CV now says she is a national morale consultant in 5 languages. The first joke is funny, but the person telling it is nervous. You nibble on some stale rye bread while listening. Something strange has happened. Local fortune tellers have started using red lipstick to stamp their tarot cards. They say the color is a protection against sexually transmitted curses. The stove is hot, and you almost drop your slice. Someone says that lipstick protection is cheaper than a French letter, which makes everyone laugh. This makes the mood better, but it is a bit like being on a tightrope between being very excited and being very funny. Joke 2. Outside, martial law notices are on every pole. They tell people about curfew at dusk, ration coupons at dawn, and there's a line about where to find recreational facilities. Historians still can't agree on what the early decrees were actually for. Were they meant to stop people from doing bad things? Or were they just a way to make more money for Vermark? You look closely at Anya's face as she counts coins that never add up. Her eyes look older than her mother's wedding portrait, which is hanging on the wall. Horses and carts go down the cobbled road. They are pulling a covered wagon with a red cross on it. This wagon used to be used to provide medical help. Now it flies mattresses and kerosene lamps to the warehouses by the river. Your chest feels tight, knowing that soon there will be people in the wagon who are not smiling, but who are actually feeling sad. You wonder which of these women will be volunteered. People will volunteer because they are hungry. The second fact, by October, there are so few cigarettes that you could buy a winter coat for them. That cigarette is often taken from the soldiers' rations. After 10 minutes of talking in private, the courtyard fills with the smell of rain and horse sweat. You move to the window, your palms leaving ghostly prints on the glass. Across the street, a man flips his sign to closed, even though it is only noon. He goes to the same pub as last week, where they've put velvet seats and a big back door that an ambulance could get through. Small changes, big results. Joke 3 suddenly appears in your head. You could call it wartime interior design, with a rustic look and a touch of vintage style. Your laugh stops you from saying something because it's true. The sky is painted a pale green as evening approaches. Candles on the 3rd floor are flickering, and shadows of people are moving like marionettes. A train whistle can be heard in the distance, suggesting journeys to unknown places. There is a rumor that some of those trains carry portable brothels. These brothels are disguised as field hospitals, and they have doctors on board who mainly prescribe temporary exhilaration. We don't know if passengers go willingly or if they're forced to go, because the people who are on the trains and could tell us what happened are no longer around. Years later, scholars will debate this, but tonight you only feel the cold wind coming through the plaster. An ear presses a bundle of laundry into your arms. "Take these to Mrs. Zelinska on Frieder Street," she whispers. You set out, past murals of white and red eagles that have now been smeared by boots. The city smells of cold dust and quiet panic. At Frieder Street, a queue forms outside a bakery, where people buy half loaves of bread that might keep them going until tomorrow. You carry the package through, and Mrs. Zelinska gives you a note that is sealed with wax. The message, which was revealed under a light in the attic, shows an underground path to safety or slavery, depending on how it is understood. When I got back to the flat, it was dark. Lamps burn special oils that make your throat itch. Women try to smile in a mirror, but it's not easy. They are nervous, as if they're drawing bullseyes on their own lips with their lipstick. You dip a cloth in warm water, wipe the mud off your boots, and listen to a German radio broadcast. It talks about Ordnung, which means order and discipline. Everyone knows that discipline has a loophole shaped like a brothel door. You lie on a thin mattress, thinking about everything you have to do while your body is tired and wants to sleep. The wind makes the pain worse, and somewhere a gramophone plays a waltz that used to be heard in ballrooms. Under the music, you can hear footsteps pounding down the stairwell. They make the building shake as if it is being attacked. You breathe out slowly, counting heartbeats, wondering how you will deal with the days ahead, when every path leads to a different choice about what is right or wrong. Rain returns, heavier now, drumming a lullaby against the roof. Your eyelids feel heavy but won't close fully. When you're feeling a bit numb, you think about what tomorrow will be like and what might happen. You imagine that officials will come to your home with a clipboard, ready to make you work in a job that needs secrecy. Lightning flashes, and for a moment you see your reflection in the window. You are tired, but you also feel determined. Sleep finally comes over you, and you feel restless and not very deep. In the next dream, red paper lanterns hang down from the sky like ghostly lights. Their candles flicker when a gun goes off in the distance. You walk among them, collecting dead wicks and whispering names of women who are still awake in real beds, with real fears surrounding them. In that dream, you promise to remember every face, even if official records are empty. Morning will bring wagons that have been taken over, more rumors and choices that are as important as your own heartbeat. For now, though, you hover at the edge of consciousness, cradled by the rhythmic patterns. The flames of the stove go out. The gate to the courtyard opens and closes again, and Warsaw waits with excitement for an occupation that has already begun in spirit, even if it hasn't made the news yet. You make your way through barbed wire strung between lampposts that are half collapsed, as the sky to the east is painted a bruised purple by the sun. Frosty bits of ration card stubs can be seen fluttering on notice boards. A trumpet is sounding nearby, a loud noise that breaks like a whip through quiet streets. You breathe quickly as you walk past a sign that says, "Licensed Morality Station." Only authorized personnel can use this. Regulations are easy to understand in German and broken Polish. All women who are thought to have a bad reputation must sign in, wear an ID badge, and check in with the doctor every week for a sanitary inspection. By spring 1940, the German and Soviet authorities had introduced these systems in all the areas they had taken over in Poland. They did this to try to control the spread of a disease that can cause swelling in the skin and to make sure that the soldiers were being good. Officially, the measures are called morals police ordinances, but you think their real purpose is to make money, not to be religious. You duck into a narrow alley to read a fresh poster. It lists penalties for unlicensed work. These range from 20 lashes to 3 weeks in confinement. Women who have registered get coupons for extra soup portions, but they have to give up their right to privacy. Your fingertips brush away the chipped paint on the brick wall where someone has scrawled in charcoal the words, "No badge, no shame." A playful wink of rebellion, like a secret handshake. Inside the registration office, you wait behind a line of women. They're holding notebooks filled with pieces of poetry, cigarette butts, and prayer requests. You all shake in the same green coats that you got from the army. The clerk quickly and efficiently stamps the forms. Her face looks as hard as the ration bread. You give your name, age, and home address. This information used to feel personal, but now it just feels like a set of random numbers. Time to face the facts. In France and Belgium, similar laws were introduced in June 1940, greatly affecting the lives of thousands of women who were not clearly regulated. A nurse will take your temperature. They will hold a special tool under your tongue to measure it. Behind her, a rack holds simple jumpsuits marked comfort station staff. You move away, your heart beating faster. Some women sewed hidden pockets into their uniforms to take letters to their families, apparently. Historians still can't agree on whether those pockets saved lives or just made people believe victim stories. You're given a small booklet with official seals on it. The document gives clear instructions on curfew hours, client quotas, and acceptable contact procedures. Speak only German or English. You can order online. You imagine a Polish accent being spoken quietly through thin walls. Words like blessed, stark, and stay strong are more important than any formality. You put the booklet into your coat, feeling heavy. Outside, you walk past 4 soldiers looking at windows painted pastel for places where people like to have fun. You hear bits of their conversation. One person says that the pattern on the wall makes them think of his aunt's living room in Munich. You snort into your sleeve. Silent joke number 1. You can almost picture him saying that floral prints is a war crime. After 4 blocks, you will find the comfort station, a building that used to be a school with barred windows and a red cross above the archway. A steward in a bow tie greets you in a very friendly way. He offers a peppered biscuit and a cup of weak tea. You bite into the biscuit to hide the fact that you're nervous. You have 2 thoughts. The food in the camp kitchen is hot and ready to eat. He looks through your booklet and takes you to a room full of beds with thin curtains between them. You notice Anna's cameo from last night around the neck of another woman, her hands folded over it like a lifeline. You share a nod that feels like signal code, no words, only solidarity. The steward reminds you gently that your first assignment starts at 6 p.m., and if you don't report, you'll lose your soup coupon straight away. Hunger and protocol are not a good mix. By the afternoon, you feel the warm sunlight through your cracked skin, while a piano in the next room plays a lively piece of music. The man who looks after the piano says that it belonged to a local baron before the war. You hear a sour note and imagine ghosts in silk gloves drifting through vaulted halls before everything turned to rubble. There's a strange story going around that the baron's ghost still criticizes anyone who forgets to polish his floorboards. At 4, you go through the curtained doors where the uniforms are lined up like rows of scarecrows. You put on a green dress that has lost its color, is a bit big for you, and sits on your shoulders. The fabric smells of mothballs and antiseptic. You press your badge, your new second skin, to your heart and clear your throat. The clock chimes 5 times. Pleasure drill sergeants slowly walk through the corridors to check how you look. They nod at short heels and zipped seams. You adjust your posture until your ribs hurt. You make a joke, but it's not very funny. So you keep it to yourself because you don't want to waste any energy. In this place, being funny can get you in trouble. Back in the common room, you're sitting there reading the code book while sipping some broth that has been left out for a while. There's a maximum of 20 clients allowed each night. Condoms are given out in packets that are sealed. There was no fraternization, just a simple exchange of coins. It is officially a measure against disease. It feels like there is a shortage of bodies. I can hear footsteps. A big police officer clicks his heels at attention. You put the booklet away just as he announces the new orders. There will be random medical visits every hour, fines for not following the rules, and no tolerance for refusal. You look at the small print and think of your mom's garden. You remember roses bending under summer storms, but standing still. You tighten your jaw, knowing that giving it might make you feel small, but staying strong is what keeps you alive. Check the facts. By late 1940, one Red Cross report said that the number of infections among troops was rising, even though these controls were in place. This made people think that the system was more about making money than about health services. You get up and follow a line of women through the curving hallways back to the courtyard, where the light from the lamps is almost swallowed up by the fog. Lanterns hang from posts like glowing sentinels. You stop under one, your fingers almost touching the chipped paint, and you draw a stencil that is faded. It has a picture of a wreath around the word Sicherheit on Schutz, security and protection. But who is it protecting? A wind blows past, carrying the distant sound of artillery. You hold the lantern and take a step forward. Your night out starts soon, swapping chat for money, friends for vouchers. Every time someone buys something, the line between what is real and what is money becomes more blurred. But when you breathe in and out slowly and carefully, you find that you have more determination and strength than you thought. You breathe in the smoky air, tasting grit and determination. The rules might try to define your reflection in a booklet, but you can stop and rewrite every line however you like. It gets darker as the doors to the station open for the first patrol. You move your neck to fit each shape, knowing you'll do a dance based on laws you never agreed to. The curfew bells will ring at midnight. Until then, you walk through clean corridors, a record of history being made quietly. Outside, Warsaw's network of streets is waiting. The city's energy is in sync with your own. Just before orders are given, you put your coat around yourself like armor and walk into the guard's light. You step onto a path where it is very dangerous, and you have to decide what is right and what is wrong. You step off the old wooden platform at the train station, which smells of diesel and damp wool. You feel a bit sick as you look for the waitress job you were promised. A slim man in a suit that doesn't fit him properly greets you with a grin that shines under the flickering lanterns. He has a slim portfolio with him and offers you a cigarette from a tin that is crackling. You probably won't last very long if you get bored in your job, so you take a drag on your cigarette, breathe in the strong smell, and nod as he starts to talk about his business. He speaks quickly and in a smooth voice. He promises hot meals twice a day, regular pay in Reichsmarks, and a tidy room at the frontier outpost. He points to a worn-out coach bus parked next to the platform. The windows are covered in dust and rain. You catch the tail end of his brochure, a steamed hospitality roll, and serve officers and their guests. The words hang in the damp air like a trap waiting to snap shut. You hold the tin cigarette box while he tells you nice lies. By the middle of 1941, recruiters working in what were called hospitality services were officially employed under civilian contracts in occupied regions. This was to meet the demand for recreation among the troops. You keep that fact to yourself. Most history books say that thousands of people were tricked into signing papers in stalls and town halls. He hands you a contract printed in tiny Gothic script. The ink smudges under your finger. The contract says that you have to work for the company for 3 months. You can't take any time off without the company's permission, and you have to keep information secret. One of the conditions is that you agree to regular health checkups and where you will live, which will be chosen by the military. You frown and put on a pair of gloves, feeling the weight of the papers like there's something secret. Outside, the clock on the wall ticks loudly. Soldiers in muddy boots walk past, staring at your gloves as if they hold clues. You roll the contract up and put in your coat pocket. Some people say that women sewed secret messages into gloves and handkerchiefs to let each other know about transfers. You smile. Joke number 1. The recruiter gives you a silk scarf while explaining the plan. You twirl the scarf and feel its smooth fabric slip through your fingers. He tells you that the frontier barracks have a cultural program with folk dancing and live accordion nights. You imagine waltzing in a field under the lights of lanterns. You might make a joke about a holiday resort with a lot of activities like Club Med and the idea of being able to hide yourself in nature. You stop yourself from saying something. You get on the bus and find a seat next to a young woman with a suitcase covered in stickers from Berlin and Munich. She smiles, but looks nervous and gives you a chocolate bar. You accept it happily, remembering the wrapper's image of dancing soldiers. You break off a piece of wood and taste the sweet flavor of sugar mixed with the smell of sawdust. Joke 2. The bus starts up and leaves town, going past empty fields and forests where the sound of distant guns can be heard. As you go along, the recruiter's friendly pat becomes less and less friendly. He adjusts his tie and checks his pocket watch. At a checkpoint, you show your contract to a uniformed guard who simply stamps it. He throws it back and you feel the paper scar. The bus stops in a muddy yard next to rows of canvas tents and wooden huts. Tents flap like birds hurt in the wind. You climb down, your boots sinking into the mud. The recruiter takes you past soldiers relaxing on crates, their boots off, laughing at a card game. They look at you as if you were the prize. You feel like you need to swallow hard. In the middle of the camp, there is a building painted olive green. There's a sign above the door that is almost impossible to see. It says Buffet Esselen Deffer. The recruiter waves you in and says hello. A guard in a trench coat nods and moves out of the way. The room smelt of boiled cabbage and disinfectant. A line of metal chairs makes a clanking noise as they hit the floor. You follow the recruiter to a temporary office where a lieutenant in smart boots checks your documents. He looks at your gloves and scarf and sees the silk pattern. You look directly into his eyes. He stamps your contract again, which means you can't change your situation. This is an official fact. By late 1941, the German High Command had set up over 50 of these comfort stations across Europe and the Eastern Front. You eat the last of your chocolate and feel worried. The lieutenant gives you your ID badge, which is an oval disc on a black ribbon. Then he points to a line of curtained rooms. Your pulse beats like bombs far away. You realize that waitressing is about much more than just serving coffee. In the corridor, an old radio plays news in a foreign accent. You hear about shortages of supplies and how the soldiers are feeling. Historians still can't agree on what the comfort stations were mainly used for. Were they set up to stop people going to brothels, or was the idea just to get money into the military's pockets? You look at your reflection in a scratched mirror and don't recognize the face looking back. A matronly woman with glasses on her hands gives you a uniform. It is a green dress that has lost its color. It has a raised waistline and a collar that rubs your neck. The fabric smells of detergent and damp linen. You step into it and cover your mouth and nose. Some people have said that uniforms used in the film were actually used in hospitals to make it look like fewer people were involved in the film than actually were. You pull on a loose thread and think about testing that theory later. The recruiter taps his watch and leads you to a small lounge where there's a lone accordionist playing a sad folk tune. He nods to the accordionist and whispers something in his ear. The music changes to a lively waltz, filling the lounge with a quiet cheer. You slide into a soft, comfortable back chair, and a musician playing the accordion bows his hat. You move the scarf around your neck, feeling each stitch like a reminder of the decision you made. He brings you a cup of watery soup and a piece of bread. The recruiter smiles and says, "Welcome to your new assignment." You lift the bread, which feels dense and grainy. When you take a bite, you taste more grit than grain. Joke 3. A police officer comes over with a clipboard and says your name. You follow him through the curtained doors into a big tent lit by strings of bare bulbs. Rows of beds with folded blankets and slightly yellow pillows line the walls. Count 7 paces to measure the distance between the 2 cots. A bell rings overhead, vibrating through the canvas. The officer gives you a quick rundown of what you'll be doing. The shift starts at 6 p.m. and ends at midnight. You will greet officers and enlisted men separately. Meals are served at set times. Medical checks are carried out when you arrive and when you leave. You can't leave without permission. You nod, feeling each rule make you weaker. Outside the tent, you see the recruiter running away with his portfolio. You think about the contract you have in your coat pocket and worry about what will happen if you say no to another task. You could appeal, but it's hard to do. When you leave the tent, you can feel a cool breeze on your skin, and you can smell pine and hear distant gunfire. The frontier outpost feels like the edge of the world, a place where rules bend like light through broken glass. You put your badge under your scarf and breathe in the cold air. A single lantern hangs from a tree. Its light moves across the frozen ground. You pull your coat tight and go to the barracks door. Your shadow stretches long and thin across the earth. At that moment, you understand that deception has many forms. Some people wear friendly smiles and carry silk scarves. Others stand behind desks in a color called olive drab. All of these things have an effect on the path you are currently on. You lift your hand and knock on the barracks door. Your heart is beating really fast. The door opens as soon as you knock. The warm light of the lamp shines on the frozen ground inside. You breathe in that warmth and go through the door, leaving the cold and the lies behind, even as they follow you closely. You step into the dark, stuffy train carriage that smells of cold dust and sweat, and join a crowd huddled on wooden benches. At night, the sky is filled with a soft glow from the stars and the occasional distant explosion. Every breath feels like you're taking it in quickly as you get closer to a nurse wearing a white apron. Her eyes show worry as she quietly sings a lullaby. You hold her shoulder to help you stay balanced when the car shakes. The sound of metal teeth grinding on rails is like a hungry beast waking up. The carriage sways in long arcs that make you feel sick. You're sitting on a bench with a dancer who is holding a worn-out violin case. She tells you that she used to perform in a music hall in Paris before the war closed it. Her fingers drum a nervous rhythm on the case while she quietly talks about lost waltzes. The soldier in the corner sketches her profile in charcoal, his hands stained with graphite and guilt. You see a look of recognition in his eyes when you look into them. You have a joke in your mind, but you can't think of it. In the dark, you can see shapes moving between the benches. A thin man with a bent mustache is moving around, putting folded papers into people's coats and boots. He quietly gives important instructions to groups of spies and messengers. Some people are saying that he is part of a secret network that passes information from areas under occupation back to London. You feel like you need to swallow hard when he gives you a piece of paper too quickly to read. You put it in your coat pocket without looking. The train goes through forests that look like watercolor paintings. You can feel every tree as it gently thumps against the car's side. Sometimes, the light from the lantern leaks through the cracks, showing faces that look tired, hopeful, or scared. Behind you, a maid from a manor in Normandy is knitting socks for soldiers. Their feet will march through frost and chaos. She stops to give you a stitch for luck. You tie the yarn to your wrist, its loop a silent promise to survive. The metal roof above you rattles with each jolt. You put your hand on your chest, feeling your heartbeat slow down as you go down the stairs. The nurse leans over to share a piece of bread and a cup of tea that is not too hot. When you swallow, you can taste dryness and rue. Time to face the facts. You remember a military report from 1942 that said transport trains for soldiers and other workers often carried civilians in the same carriages. This was to save money and keep it secret. Somewhere in the distance, there's a loud bang like a thunderclap, breaking the silence. Small pieces of glass fall from a broken window, covering the floor with sharp pieces like confetti. You jump when a car shakes, then hold the nurse's hand. She squeezes gently and smiles, but her smile is a bit shaky. It's like she's trying to be strong, but it's hard for her. You nod back, happy to feel human touch in the middle of all the noise and mess. You move to keep your legs steady when the carriage suddenly tilts. A dancer stops herself from laughing as she writes, her violin case hitting the bench. You joke that at least the music will have a live audience, but the joke sounds weak and fades away in the small space. Joke 2 drifts on the air like a loose thread that is waiting to be pulled. A faint glow appears at the end of the car, where a single bulb flickers above a metal door. You stand and push your way past a crowd of people, your coat brushing against other people's bodies. A spy moves out of the way, nods and whispers to tell them to be quiet. Look past his eyes, and you will see secrets that could destroy empires. You want to ask his name, but you can't speak. At the door, you see soldiers taking supplies off a truck. They're using a platform that has been made for this purpose. The light is not very bright. Crates marked with crosses hold medical supplies and food tins. Wooden boxes nearby show where the ammunition is. A group of officers in leather jackets looks at a map on a wooden box. You can see them breathing in the cold air. You look through the gap and feel the rush of the front closing in. You go back inside as the door makes a noise as it closes. The carriage shakes again, but this time it's faster. You put your hands on the bench and let yourself be pulled towards a small window. You can just about see the faint glow of distant flares dancing across a field. You imagine trenches full of mud, soldiers huddled together for warmth, waiting for sunrise or death, whichever comes first. The soldier next to you, who has drawn a picture of a soldier using charcoal, touches your elbow and quietly tells you about the designs he plans to take back home when this is over. He says he'll open a small studio and draw gentle portraits of children who never knew war was a word. Imagine a peaceful future and plant that picture in your mind. Historians still can't agree on whether these artists who became soldiers were part of a bigger movement of resistance or just a few cases that got forgotten in official records. You sit down with the other passengers as the train speeds through the night. The nurse quietly prays for a safe delivery. The dancer closes her eyes and breathes deeply, perhaps dreaming of concert halls that are empty and silent. You rest your head against the wooden wall, shoulders relaxed for the first time since getting on the ship. You can hear a bit of a song coming from the violin case, even though it's quiet. The dancer has created a gentle, musical sound. It moves through the crowd, mixing together nerves and hopes in a delicate balance. You close your eyes and let the music make you feel good. In that song, you hear a promise that even steel rails and war machines cannot crush. The train's whistle blows far away and makes everyone's hearts beat faster. The carriage slows and a deep voice calls out orders in a short, sharp way. Lanterns swing from the windows as soldiers get ready for the arrival. You stand up straight, making your coat as smooth as if you were ironing out each wrinkle to make yourself feel better. The door opens onto a frozen platform where torches are burning in the cold air. Men in greatcoats walk past in pairs. Their breaths form clouds that disappear quickly. You get off the train with a nurse and dancer. Your boots make a cracking noise on the ice as you walk towards the wooden huts, which are lined up like soldiers waiting to be inspected. You can smell pine and metal. A soldier gives you a blanket and points you toward a heated tent. You look at the nurse quickly before following a path lit by lanterns that are moving in the wind. The violin case bumps your leg, but you smile anyway. Inside the tent, it's so hot that it feels like your senses are being shocked. You shake off the snow and look around at rows of bunks. Each one is a promise of rest, if only for a few hours. The nurse rubs her hands together and offers you a spot on a cot near the tent wall. You put your coat down and sit, feeling the pull of gravity on your arms and legs. As the tent fills with quiet whispers and people yawning, you realize that the rumors are true. The frontier at last. Here, you will be tested in ways you never thought possible. But in that hot tent, you also feel a connection with strangers whose lives have brought them together on these train tracks. Outside, a lone bugle sounds through the camp. You put your chin into your scarf and close your eyes. Tomorrow will be very hard. For now, you lie back on the thin mattress and let the noise of voices and the steady hum of a distant engine rock you toward sleep. You go through a low archway into a canvas pavilion lit by rows of bare bulbs strung from tore ropes. The air smells of disinfectant and boiled cabbage, and your boots sink into a thin layer of sawdust on the wooden floor. A uniformed orderly greets you and hands you a plain cotton shirt to put on. You can feel the material scratching against your skin as you tie it at the back. Rows of cots line each side of the pavilion. Their blankets are folded neatly and in a military-style arrangement. There is a table at the far end of the room. It is covered in wrapped condoms and metal trays full of medical instruments. Two doctors wearing glasses with steel frames are looking at a patient on a bed. Their gloved hands move quickly and carefully, checking notes and marking charts. Time to face the facts. In 1942, doctors in the Army checked the health of prostitutes working in military brothels to stop diseases from spreading among soldiers. You wait for your turn in a line of women who look as tired as you feel. A nurse will ask you to go to the examination table. The doctor swabs your arm for blood samples and looks for signs of infection. The light from an overhead lamp shines on his metal instruments. You focus on a poster that has been damaged. It shows a cartoon soldier flexing his bicep above the words, "Stay clean, stay strong." After the exam, you go to the ration counter where another orderly gives you a packet of 3 condoms. He makes a joke about treating rubber like ammunition, saying that you should aim carefully. You laugh nervously and put the packet in your pocket. Some people say that women sometimes exchange extra condoms for chocolate from kind soldiers. You walk into a room next to it, with thin curtains dividing the 2 rooms. Inside, there are small wooden tables and chairs that don't match. There is also a battered phonograph playing accordion music. A kettle is on a camp stove, and the air is filled with the smell of peppermint tea. You pour yourself a cup and let the warmth seep into your hands. A woman next to you is cleaning her fingernails with a broken nail file and quietly says that she is thinking of starting a beauty school when the war ends. Historians still can't agree on whether these temporary social clubs were a real comfort or just a cover for something more serious. A bell will ring twice to let you know what your assignment is. You smooth your smock, a loose robe, take a deep breath, and follow a soldier down a narrow corridor lit by flickering lanterns. His boots make a noise on the wooden floor as he leads you to a hidden corner with a curtain. You go behind the fabric and find a small table with a tin of biscuits, a broken mug, and a lamp that is not working. You carefully place your tea next to the biscuits. The lamps shine and move across the rough stone walls. He comes in, says hello with a nod, and asks for a cup of tea. You pour the hot liquid into his mug and put on the table. He takes one biscuit out of its wrapper, checks its texture, then breaks a piece off and offers it to you. The biscuit tastes like sawdust and salt, but you're grateful for the offer anyway. You think of two jokes about unusual wartime food, but you don't say them. At first, the conversation flows easily. He asks about your home, your family, and your favorite songs. You say the name of a lullaby your grandmother used to sing, and he looks a bit sad. You realize that being kind can exist even in a place full of rules and targets. He finishes his tea, signals that he is done being civil, and reaches for your hand. You stop to think, remembering the rules for the inspection that are printed in your booklet. You get up from the table and follow him behind a second curtain into a dark room with a bed that's been put together quickly. The mattress sags in the middle and springs creak under the weight of the person lying on it. He helps you remove your smock, folding it neatly on a chair. You lie back while he puts the blanket over your legs. Your heart beats quickly and loudly, and you can feel each beat against your throat, ears, and the wooden floor. You can hear quiet laughter from other people and a spoon being put down in a cup. The cracked walls seem to absorb every noise. You focus on breathing evenly as he takes off the condom from its packet with his careful fingers. You can feel the cool latex go down, and the world feels smaller as you take in each breath together. The minutes go by quickly as they are filled with lots of different feelings and quiet conversation. He asks if you believe in fate, and you remember your grandmother's advice about being strong and surviving. You reply gently that you believe in small acts of kindness. The light from the lamp flickers, and your shadow on the wall looks like doubt itself. You squeeze his hand, feeling a moment of connection in a place where there is usually a lot of violence. After that, you put on your smock and take back your packet of condoms, which is now one less. He leaves quietly and nods quickly to thank her. You fold the blanket, straighten the chair, and step out into the corridor that is lit up by the lantern. A nurse checks your wristband before you leave, scanning its number against a clipboard filled with client tallies. Each tally feels like a line drawn through your own story. You pass the inspection table on your way back and look at the charts pinned above. They track how many people are infected and how many clients they have, numbers that reduce human lives to statistics. You shiver as a breeze comes in through a hole in the tent. Outside, boots patter on wooden planks as the next shift begins. You go back to the common room, where the photograph is now being played. A woman is having a cup of tea and offers you a biscuit that has been cut in half. You accept it. Tired and happy to have been helped, you think about wartime snack breaks and laugh quietly. A medical orderly tells everyone that it's time for a break. You step outside into the cool evening air, breathing in the smell of pine and damp earth. Lanterns swing from the ceiling, making shadows that move across the floor. You hold your packet of condoms to your chest like a lucky charm. Each rubber sheath represents your own freedom in a strict world. You find a quiet corner and lean against the canvas wall of the tent. You look up at the Milky Way and think about how many other women are also looking up at it. You imagine them holding on to the same little things that make them feel good. A hot cup of tea, a broken biscuit, a borrowed smile. Under the light of a single lantern, you follow the path of a falling star, quietly hoping for strength. The break ends and you straighten your smock, wiping sawdust from its hem. You go back inside, ready for the next task, knowing that each transaction moves you closer to tomorrow, but further from who you were before. You can smell disinfectant and steel. Try to feel a tightening in your chest, as if you were being pulled in a bowstring. Clients wait beyond the curtain again, shadows moving in quiet anticipation. You lift the fabric, breathing steadily and step forward again into the light of the pavilion, ready to carry another story of strength and sadness. You sigh as the sun goes down and the lanterns in the pavilion are switched on, their soft light making the sawdust floor look a bit yellow. A steward taps his boot impatiently and slides a metal clipboard across a small folding table. Your name is at the top, with the number 20 circled in red. Tonight, we have a target of 20 clients. There are no exceptions. You hold the clipboard, and it feels heavy, tired, or broken. You put on your smock and look at yourself in a mirror that is stuck to a tent pole. Your hair is held tightly in place. Your cheeks are red from the heat of the day, and your eyes shine with determination. You brush a loose strand of hair behind your ear and smile. Try to look warm and friendly without smiling too much. Joke 1 comes out. You think it's the world's most exhausting waiting list, but you push the thought to one side before it grows stronger. The steward announces the first patrol group, and you go into a corridor with curtains. Each alcove has a tidy bed, a lamp, and a small table with tins of biscuits and mugs. You open the curtain and see your first visitor, a lieutenant who stutters and keeps glancing at the clock. He offers you a limp biscuit and says sorry for its crumbly state. You bite into it, and you can taste the hard life of the frontier. You put him on the bed and pour tea into his mug. He asks about your day, but you just make a joke about the time it takes to make cocktails in a fancy military style. He laughs at your joke, then leans forward to give you a coin, and his cheeks go red. A tactile cue marks 1 down. Just 19 more to go. You tidy the alcove and move to the next curtain, glancing at the steward's clock on the wall. Time passes slowly. You take a deep breath as a soldier strides into the room, his boots making a crisp sound on the floor. He thumbs through his gloves and says that if you charge by the hour, it must be easier to reach quotas. You equip that, and sometimes you wish you could charge by the minute. He laughs, and you notice the first entry has been scratched out of the ledger. In the break room, a nurse fills the tea kettle again and quietly says that in 1943, brothels on the front line had to have a set number of clients every night to keep the soldiers happy and make sure there were enough staff. Time to face the facts. Records from the German High Command show that the number of people killed in concentration camps was expected to meet these targets, or else the budget would be cut. You nod and pick a new packet of condoms from a shelf. A strange rumor arrives, spreading through the canvas, about some women who kept small notebooks that looked like recipe books. These notebooks were used to remember each client's likes and nicknames. You imagine a stew of soldier stories, hidden in secret messages. Historians still can't agree on whether these personal logs offered emotional support or just documented exploitation. You go back to the corridor, counting 7 paces between each alcove. You put your smock behind your belt, smoothing out the fabric that is shaking like a flag that has been captured. The next visitor is a tired soldier who says sorry for falling asleep during the meeting. You laugh gently and tell him that nodding off is a kind gesture. A joke is said quietly and in a way that makes you feel good. You lead him to the bed and sit next to him, and you ask him if he would like peppermint or chamomile tea. Afterwards, he chooses peppermint tea. You get 2 mugs, give him 1, and drink from your own. You feel the steam between you as you enjoy a moment of normality in the middle of the show. The heat of the day gives way to the cool of the evening. You step outside the pavilion to drop off used cups and exchange them for fresh ones. The lanterns glow like stars as you breathe in the cold air. Somewhere, a gramophone scratches out a poker that floats across the camp. You smile at the silliness of a dance tune marking someone else's tired steps. When you get back inside, a police officer is waiting by your door and is tapping impatiently on it. He praises your steady hand and asks if you're ever afraid of quotas. You look into his eyes and reply gently, explaining that fear and determination often go hand in hand, but determination often lasts much longer than fear. He thanks you for your honesty by offering you a chocolate bar, which you accept with gratitude. You hide that chocolate for later, a small rebellion. As the night goes on and the number of people on the list gets closer to 15, I start to feel tired. You can feel it in your shoulders, and you can see it when your fingers shake. Every time I breathe in, I can smell cigar, smoke, and antiseptic. You put your hand on your chest to check your pulse, feeling nervous. The steward signals that they want to inspect the plane. A doctor comes in with a clipboard and looks around the corridor. He checks wristbands and counts slips of paper. You hold your breath while he pauses at your alley, then nods and moves on. You exhale, pressing your back against the cool canvas wall. You count again, 18 down, 2 to go. You can hear your voice quieting down as you ask for more tea. You serve with practice, pouring from the kettle until there is just enough tea left in the mug. The last clients arrive, a captain and a first-floor tenant who joke that they are racing to break a record. You laugh and tease that they might need extension cords for that kind of stamina. Joke 3 slips into the air like a wink. They get into bed together and start talking about how they're both working double shifts and getting extra pay for it. You put them in blankets and leave, closing the steward's clipboard. You go back to the book and watch him write the last number. 20-liter capacity. The steward nods toward the curtain and gives you a slip of paper for a break. You will have 15 minutes in the privacy tent. You slide behind a flap and sit down on a wooden crate. Your knees hurt and your mind is filled with the sounds of the night. You take the chocolate bar out of its wrapper and hold it in your hands. It is warm. Outside the tent, a flute plays a soft lullaby, with its notes drifting through the canvas like smoke rings. You close your eyes and taste the chocolate. Every piece of crumb reminds me of something. A series of steps that show the path back to your previous state before the introduction of quotas. You can picture the nurse, the dancer, the spy on the train. You stitch their faces into a mental quilt for comfort. After 15 minutes, there's a tug at the flap. You feel your chest loosen and tie your smock again. You put the paper in your pocket and go into the corridor. The light of the lantern flares on your face, showing eyes that look like storm clouds and sunflower seeds of hope. You go through each small bay, saying hello to the soldiers with a nod. Some look at you and thank you, while others just feel a bit better. You gently guide them, reciting rules you know by heart. These are routines that you have practiced so many times that you can do them without thinking. At midnight, the steward swings the doors of the pavilion open and announces that it's time to turn off the lights. Everyone is quiet as blankets rustle and snores can be heard. You get your stuff ready, smock and gloves. Put them on a small stool. You take the clipboard and go out into the cool night. You walk back toward the big tent, the sound of your boots crunching on the frosty ground. Lanterns line the path, their glow soft and forgiving. You breathe in deeply, smelling the pine and feeling excited about what might happen. Behind you, the pavilion door closes, keeping your secrets safe until tomorrow. You stop under a lantern and tilt your head, letting its light warm your face. You close your eyes and listen to the nighttime sounds of the city, like distant gunshots, the sound of engines, and a quiet flute. The chorus shows a delicate balance between helping others and looking after yourself. You start walking again, knowing that tomorrow will be the same. But tonight, you have won a small victory. 20 people met, 20 small mercies offered, and one steward's nod that you survived the quota. You step out of the light from the lantern into a space surrounded by wooden benches and a fire pit full of pine needles. The camp's main tent is open, with its flaps tied back to show rows of tables and folding chairs. Soldiers relax in pairs, passing parcels wrapped in newspaper. When you go in, you feel the warmth from the fire. A simple exchange of small gifts is more powerful than an order. A man waves you over. He has a crooked smile under a black mark on his face. He takes out a piece of wax paper and shows me a square of chocolate. He offers you half, his eyes shining with generosity. You break off a piece and let it meld on your tongue. The sweetness that makes you forget the dull walls around you. He jokes that this tastes better than any emergency food. You laugh gently. It's a joke, but it's also true. Across the table, a soldier unwraps a bar of soap that has been carved with initials by a soldier back home. He says that some men pack luxury items in care packages to trade for company. You smell the soap's lavender scent and feel calm. You sit down on a bench next to a police officer who is looking through a worn-out magazine full of sexy pictures and stories about the stars. She hands it to you, talking about stories of Clark Gable's latest tour of war bonds and Rita Hayworth signing autographs for the soldiers. You read an article about film crews joining combat units to make their films more realistic. In 1944, Hollywood studios worked with military censors to make newsreels to boost the spirits of people at frontline rest centers. Let's be honest. You read a gossip story that says a young actress once hid letters to soldiers in the seams of her suitcase. Some actresses are said to have sent each other silk stockings as a secret way of showing they were interested. You imagine that image. A swirl of glamour on celluloid in muddy boots. Scholars still can't agree on whether these celebrity gestures really made people feel better or were mostly just a form of propaganda. You see a flicker of movement. A GI puts down a tin of sardines and takes out a small hand-sewn pillow with a cartoon bulldog on it, wearing an aviator's helmet. He tells you the pillow was a gift from a seamstress in Manchester. She spent evenings stitching pockets into each corner of the pillow to hold letters from loved ones. You hold the pillow and feel its rough fabric. Each stitch is like a quiet heartbeat, linking the war zone to the home front. At a nearby table, you see a box of fresh oranges, looked after very carefully. A supply sergeant gives them each 3 rations, promising that the vitamin C will stop them getting scurvy and make their spirits better. You pick one up and bite into it, the citrus flavor and juice dribbling down your chin. You think about offering a wedge to the nearest field medication, but then you put it away. The fire gets hotter as it gets darker. You watch orange peels turn into white ash. A young lieutenant is handing out a stack of letters. They are tied together with string. He explains that a local teacher risked her safety to deliver them after curfew. You pick up a letter that's been squished between 2 sheets of paper, the ink all smudged and messy, and you think about the person who wrote it. Historians still can't agree on whether these secret mail orders ever reached more than a small number of troops. But here, in your hand, each word feels real. You lean back and enjoy the warm glow of the fire on your face. A giant robot makes a harmonica and plays a sad tune that drifted across the clearing. Close your eyes and let the music make you feel good. The soap's lavender scent mingles with pine smoke, and you imagine yourselves at a dance in a town square far away, where laughter fights with fear. When the harmonica stops playing, you notice a small tin of homemade fudge offered by a soldier in the next row. He says his sister made it using condensed milk from a ration truck. You take a bite of a cube of chocolate and feel the sweet, sticky chocolate melt on your teeth. You joke that this is the only dessert in Europe worth risking a ration ticket for. Joke 3, but no one is going to make jokes about staff duty tonight. You get up and go to a table covered with an old American flag, where a leftist activist collects things that people have traded. He checks each gift carefully and puts them in a wooden chest lined with felt. He explains that army leaders encouraged these exchanges to boost morale, and this became common by 1943 because of Red Cross rules to improve the well-being of soldiers. This is an official fact. You put your pillow and letters into a burlap sack to keep them safe. The lieutenant thanks you and points to a second chest marked personal effects. You watch a soldier put a locket inside. The locket contains a black and white photo of a loved one. You feel the lid of the chest close and think about all the memories inside. Outside the tent, there's a canvas chair under the stars. You sit and unwrap a square of chocolate you saved from earlier. The moonlight shines on the water. You breathe in the night air, which smells of pine and new beginnings. You follow the knife edge of the camp's routine exhaustion, which is made better by these small rituals. A quiet voice breaks the silence. A medic comes over and gives you a bar of soap shaped like a rose. She says it came from a man in Paris who slipped it through a border control. You take the soap and rub its lather between your fingers. You imagine petals unfurling in a hidden pocket and thriving despite the frost. A strange reminder of life going on even when times are hard. You put the soap and chocolate in your coat and stand up straight, shoulders straight, under the canvas sky. You look back at the gray, cooling embers of the fire and feel happy about what you have done this night. Soldiers return to their posts with pillows and soaps slung over their rifles. A silent parade of comforts is with them as they go through the darkness. As you walk toward the medical tent, you pass rows of empty, folding chairs. Each one made them feel a little better. A chocolate square, a letter, a whiff of lavender. You stop at the tent's entrance and put your hand against the canvas wall. Beyond this fabric barrier, you can smell antiseptics and hear the sound of bandages being stretched. A world of wounds that can be seen. You go in and the door closes behind you. You are carrying with you the remnants of the small mercies that you received tonight. With the soft light of a lamp, you put your pillow and letters down on a special bed. You unpack the gifts and arrange them to look like a special place that represents hope and comfort. A nurse comes in, quietly walking on the canvas, and nods to show she understands. You sit down on a stool and pull the embroidered pillow into your lap. The fabric is rough, but it feels like it should be there. The bulldog's smile is oddly comforting. You press the pillow to your chest and lean back, listening to the sound of clinking cups and the steady hum of generators. Outside the medical tent, the wind howls across frozen fields, carrying the smell of pine and the sound of distant gunfire. Inside, you hold these tokens from home. Even in the worst situations, small acts of kindness can make a big difference. Close your eyes and really enjoy the taste, smell, and texture of the food. Tomorrow will be tough, but tonight you can relax with your gifts and enjoy some quiet time together. The world outside these tents may be full of conflict, but here you talk about a moment of calm, which shows how strong you are, and which is found in chocolate wrappers and stitches sewn by hand. You go through a canvas flap into a brick building with a single barred window. The air inside tastes like metal, like iron filings in every breath. Fluorescent bulbs hang overhead, their brightness cutting through the mist like scalpels. You follow a person with a clipboard down a corridor lined with steel doors. Each door has a number on it. The numbers sound like footsteps walking past quickly. In the big room behind, shiny tables are lined up in rows. They are filled with vials, scalpels, and glass beakers. A serious-looking doctor in a clean white coat adjusts his glasses and gestures for you to come forward. He carries a syringe the size of a small dagger, its needle glinting under the light. You probably won't survive a wrong move, so you calm down and move closer. Time to face the facts. During World War II, Nazi doctors in camps like Ravensbrück did medical experiments on venereal diseases. They injected prisoners without telling them, so to study how infections spread and test treatments. You sit on a cold metal stool as another nurse swabs your arm with iodine. Your skin tingles where the disinfectant touches it. The doctor opens a bottle marked syphilis strain and puts it in a syringe. You look at the orderly's blank face and realize that nobody here is a kind person. Some people say that doctors used to taste the pus from infected wounds to work out how bad the infection was. It's a practice that people still talk about like a ghost story. He moves with careful steps. You can almost hear your heartbeat echoing off the tiled walls. He looks a bit annoyed and says, "Relax. We're making progress in science." Those words are always there, like a rainstorm in summer. You press your palms against your thighs, wishing you could heat them up with a match. You breathe evenly as the needle moves toward your skin. A sharp pinch of pain makes you feel sure of something. You blink and try not to cry, and imagine the invisible army of microbes that is now fighting inside you. A nurse gives you a glass of water, her lips twitching as she tries to smile. You swallow, and it tastes like chlorine. You have a joke in your head. Maybe next time they'll offer flavored saline, but you put it away before it can escape. In the next bay, you watch another woman receive an injection, her eyes looking at you as if she wants your support. You look at her and nod. You don't need to say anything. You move on the stool, the bones making a noise as they are put under pressure, and try to think more calmly. Beyond the rows of tables, a quiet, buzzing sound can be heard coming from the concrete floor. You go into a room next to it, where there are electric lamps above a long bench with lots of glass flasks. Beers are filled with brightly colored liquids and a chalkboard that shows equations written in a scrolling style. A young researcher writes notes in a leather journal while he reads data from a machine. You move closer to read the numbers that are scrolling. They look at how many people get infected and compare this to the amount of salvicin, an arsenic-based drug used before penicillin became more common, that people were given. A well-known record says that by 1943, German camps had run out of penicillin and had to use older treatments, even though these were very dangerous. Historians still can't agree on whether those poisonous treatments made lives longer or ended them more quickly, while pretending they were testing them. A small bottle breaks at your feet, spraying small pieces of glass across the floor. You take a step back. The clicking of your heels almost causes you to trip over a tray of medical charts. A lab assistant quickly moves forward, sweeping up the glass with a dustpan, as if the pieces could disappear with one easy move. You also tell a joke about broken glass being the best kind of confetti for the camp. No one joins you. A guard pushes you down a narrow hallway toward a room where you can watch what is happening. Inside, two doctors look closely through a thick glass window at a woman tied to a gurney. Wires with electrodes on her arms and legs are connected to a control box. The lead doctor adjusts a dial, and a faint electric crackle fills the air. You hold your breath while the woman's body twitches and her eyes are closed as if she is in pain. You feel sick and you look away. In a corner that is a bit dark, you see a small wooden box that is full of letters. It contains letters from families asking for information about missing daughters. The doctors treat the box like rubbish, throwing letters into a fire pit where they sparkle orange. You catch a glimpse of smudged ink and promise that every word lost here will be said somewhere else one day. A door closes and a nurse takes you back to the main hospital ward. Your arm hurts from the physical pain and also from a memory of being violated. You rub the spot where the needle went in, and you feel a bruise that starts to look like a nightshade plant. You might have heard a strange rumor. Some prisoners think that drinking frog's blood could stop the infection. A story was shared in secret to make fun of the experiments. You imagine a chorus of rib bits in the lab, echoing your silent protest. You're given a boring certificate at a small desk. It says you are not affected by Trial A and can be moved to a new job. You take the paper and fold it twice, then twice more, as if making it more compact would make the words lighter. The nurse will stamp it with a date and a location for your next checkup. You put it in your coat pocket next to your determination. You follow a corridor of peeling paint and exposed pipes. Each step stirred up memories and dust. You walk through a room where shelves are full of bottles labeled Gonicus culture. You stop and run a finger along the dusty glass. There is no success here, only the sound of dignity being taken away. If a doctor looks at you and frowns, it's best to take a step back. Outside the building, the sky is filled with a deep purple glow as day turns to night. You stretch your arms and shoulders, feeling the pain as a sign that you're still alive. A breeze blows on the leaves at your feet. You pick one up, its edges are crisp and dry, and you tuck it between the pages of your journal. Later, a silent moment of survival. In the distance, a whistle tells workers to go back to their barracks. You join the line of women heading for evening roll call. Their footsteps are like a steady drumming sound against the cracked pavement. It starts to rain lightly, and the rain touches your coat like a quiet cheer. You tilt your face up and let the water drip down your cheeks. Joke 3 moves forward. Maybe you'll patent rainwater therapy next, but you just smile how silly it is. As you cross the yard, the lights in the barracks come on one by one, showing the shapes of people moving behind frosted windows. You feel the weight of the truths you have seen settle in your chest, heavy as concrete walls. You hold your coat tightly and push on, carrying both the bruise on your arm and a feeling of determination. Tonight, the labs are locked and their secrets are safe until curiosity or trouble makes them open their doors. You walk past that brick building one last time, its window covered by bars and looking dark and empty. You breathe in the cool air and let the quiet of the night soothe your mind. In every silent heartbeat, you promise to remember each procedure, each whisper, each time you took a breath until the world listened. You get off a truck in a French town that has just been liberated. Bunting made from bed sheets is hanging above the cobblestones, which are wet from the rain. Soldiers are wearing boots and have mud on their shoes. They're standing next to wooden huts. The huts are painted green and white. A sign on the wall says Recreation Center, but you know the real purpose is just behind the curtain. You can smell the fresh coffee and gun oil. I'm wondering how quickly freedom changes into something else. You push through a flap into a hall that is warm from a kerosene heater. There are rows of folding chairs in front of a stage with a gramophone playing wartime tunes. Nurses wearing Red Cross armbands give out mugs of cocoa, which they have made using sugar that was saved from rations. Time to face the facts. By the middle of 1944, the Allied forces had set up hundreds of Red Cross and YMCA huts across Europe that had been freed from the Nazis. These huts provided soldiers with places to relax and with services that made sure they were well looked after, but the soldiers had to follow strict rules. You walk past a table with lots of freshly washed towels and a rack of donated underwear that has been used to make uniforms. A person in uniform gives you a leaflet. It has a code of conduct on it. It says that women must register and wear colored sashes to show their health status. You put the leaflet in your coat pocket. It feels crisp, like a dossier you never asked for. A private comes up to you with a big grin, like the edge of his bayonet. He holds out a bar of mint soap in the shape of an anchor. He jokes that it can also be used as ammunition if needed. Joke 1 comes out. Maybe soap grenades will be the next big thing in the military. But you nod and put the soap in your pocket. You step outside into a courtyard surrounded by low brick buildings. A line of women stand beneath a shelter. Each woman has a tin cup and a ration card. You join the line of people, noticing that they are young, scarred, and determined. Some people say that some of the women who were forced to have sex for the soldiers were once entertainers who were tricked by promises of stage roles. You tilt your head, thinking about how strange it is, and wait. In a small office, a clerk checks your ration card, writes down your name, and gives you a red sash with a white cross on it. You put it over your shoulder and feel how heavy it is. Historians still disagree about whether these registration systems protected women from violence or just made another form of exploitation official, pretending it was a health measure. You follow a nurse along a corridor. The walls are covered by curtains, and each curtain has one light bulb hanging from a nail. The nurse taps gently on your arm and points towards an alcove where a corporal is waiting. He offers you a bruised rose that he picked from a garden behind the town hall. You smile a little and gently press flowers between your fingers, as if you can catch beauty before it fades. He takes you to a chair by the warm stove and pours you a cup of tea. The steam from the hot water curls around your face, like a promise that you can barely hear. You offer him a biscuit, which is warm and soft, and he bites into it with a loud crunch. You joke that it tastes like hope kneaded with flour. Say 2 jokes before you put your tongue back in your mouth. Outside, you see a barber's stand made from tattered flags. A barber uses a knife to carve soap into decorative shapes while cutting the hair of a soldier. People say he makes small helmets and bayonets out of soap to make men less nervous about the next advance. You think that's funny, and you smile. Back in the corridor, the corporal keeps looking at your sash. He lifts it up, runs a finger along the cross sewn into it, and says quietly, "This means safety." You nod, but safety here feels like it's not worth it. He puts the rose in a vase on the table and holds out his hand. You follow him through a second curtain into a larger hall where chairs are arranged around low tables. A jukebox in the corner plays a swing tune from before the war. Soldiers tap their boots and snap their fingers to the beat, filling the hall with energy. You sit by a window and watch the rain. It looks like broken promises. The soldier gives you 2 mugs of cocoa. He quietly raises his mug to make a toast to survival. You put yours next to his and drink. The cocoa is thick, sweet, and tinted with exhaustion. You both sit quietly for a while, listening to the sound of laughter coming from another corner where a card game is being played. He puts a peppermint soap rose on the table next to your mug. You trace its carved petals and feel comforted by its permanence. He leans back and says, "These sinners keep men alive, but what about us?" You look at him and nod. Sometimes it feels like there is not enough compassion for everyone. You become a nurse, which means you get your next job. She takes you down a ramp behind the hall into a room with a lantern. In the dark room, you can see beds arranged in neat rows. Each bed has a thin mattress and a wool blanket. Each cot has a lamp to keep it warm. You choose one by the far wall, where you notice a small table next to it. It has a vase of dried lavender on it. The nurse gives you a packet with 2 condoms and a sheet of paper with tips for the room. Don't make any loud noises. Don't go out after curfew. If you're sick, tell someone straight away. You put the packet into your coat, feeling the latex like it's delicate. You lie back on the bed and close your eyes. The smell of lavender is soft and comforting. You remember pianos in other places, people laughing in French cafes, and American jazz on old recordings. You wonder if hospitality really means care, or if it just makes people feel good in a controlled way. A quiet tune comes through the wall, someone humming a song from home. You focus on the notes and let them take your mind away from the hard times of the past. You can hear distant thunderous gunfire in the background. Breathe in, feeling the tension in your chest as you exhale. A sergeant comes into your room to check the lighting. He has a clipboard with a list of names on it. He crosses them off as he does inspections. He smiles politely and says, "Your sash looks nice and fresh." You nod and ask if he ever has any doubts about this work. He blinks, looks at your face, and says, "Sometimes the only choice is to keep moving." You look at the lamp and feel its warm light on your skin. Imagine yourself knitting lace in a different life or writing stories in a notebook by candlelight. You tuck those images deep as you get up from the bed and fold your sash carefully. In the hallway, you pass a group of women sitting on barrels. They're sharing jokes in broken English. One offers you a cigarette rolled in an old newspaper. You accept it and are grateful. It's a small act of rebellion. Breathe in the smoke and let it mix with the lavender scent that is still on your skin. Back in the recreation hall, the jukebox switches to a slow ballad. Soldiers stand in pairs, swaying on old boards. You watch them and think about the steps you would take. I'm measuring, being careful, and following the rhythm, but I'm not sure about the steps. As the music plays, you walk to a small stage and run a hand across its polished surface. A microphone is on its own at the center of the stage, with its cable wound up like a snake ready to bite. You climb onto the stage without much thought, your heart beating faster, and you lean towards the microphone. Your voice sounds quiet and gentle, a lullaby your grandmother used to sing. The hall is silent. Soldiers turn at the sound of the melody. Their heads tilt as if they're hearing home for the first time in months. You sing quietly. Each note was like a soothing balm, safe and secure in these walls and in these arms. Get a good night's sleep tonight. When you finish, applause comes out slowly. You get up, your cheeks feel warm, and you go back to your bed under the smell of lavender and the sound of electric bulbs. Here in this sanctuary, you have both comfort and compromise. Outside the windows, rain makes distant ruins look like they are painted with watercolors. Inside, a community that is not strong comes together under care that is not perfect. Tonight, you are in a place between two worlds. One of these worlds is full of conflict. The other world is full of small acts of kindness that happen under false pretenses. You close your eyes and let the lullaby linger. Tomorrow will bring a different kind of quota, lessons in loss and resilience. For now, you surrender to the quiet where the scents of lavender, cocoa, and song create a temporary promise of peace. You go through a small back entrance of the temporary brothel. The lantern above the door casts an uneven light on chipped paint and a faded red cross. The silence inside is heavier than any curfew bell, only interrupted by quiet laughter and the sound of teacups being clinked together. You hold a piece of paper up to your chest. Its edges are brittle, like a secret waiting to be revealed. In the common room, women arrange roses in tin cans and light low-burning candles to hide the smell of disinfectant. A nurse sits at a table at the corner of the room and talks to a soldier about the new delivery of tea. You take your place in the line, slide behind a worn-out mattress that's been propped against the wall, and slip the folded note beneath its steel springs. You might have a joke in your head. You think about calling it mattress mail, but you stop yourself before it ruins the mood. A veteran courier once said that by 1943, the Polish Home Army had recruited women who worked in brothels. These women would carry messages hidden in buttons, boots, and bed frames. This was so that they could get around German checkpoints. You move back towards the door and crouch down in the alley. The night air smells of damp cobblestones and the smoke from pine torches used by the guards. A stray cat runs between your legs. Its fur is patchy, like old battle scars. You gently scold it for almost tripping you. That's a really stupid joke. Even the resistance fighters who are cats deserve to be told what to do. You walk across an empty courtyard towards a line of warehouses that have been damaged by bombs. On the far side, a partisan, someone who is fighting for a cause, waits by a stack of wooden crates painted with camouflage stripes. He nods when you approach, keeping his hands tucked inside his wool coat. You bow slightly and touch your heart with your palm. He offers a flask filled with a strong coffee that tastes like burnt hopes and sugar. You take a sip, enjoying the bitter flavor. In a gravel-strewn corner, you find a message by lifting the mattress's corner with your finger. Inside the small piece of paper, lines of ink bend into secret words. You put it in your coat pocket and look at the note the partisan hands you. It's a thin strip of fabric with numbers on it that look like barbed wire. A whisper says the stitches show where the enemy is getting supplies. a map made of fabric that was meant to be burned before sunrise. He tilts his head and quietly gives instructions. Take this to a safe house under the church steeple before sunrise. You nod, and he gives you a coin as a sign of thanks. His eyes shine in the moonlight, and he looks very determined. You slip away under the slanted beams of the searchlight, your heart beating faster like the beat of battle drums. The fabric feels warm against your skin. You imagine German patrols walking these same streets just moments ago, unaware that information was collected secretly just beyond their reach. A breeze rattles a shutter above you, sounding like a distant cannon shot. You stop and look up at the broken windows. There are paper streamers hanging from them like ghostly bookmarks in ruined libraries. You keep yourself calm and try to smile for whatever guard you'll meet next. In the next block, a soldier who has recently returned from leave is guarding a cafe that has been converted into a temporary military base. His helmet is tipped low, hiding his eyes. You go over to him and say good evening. He nods and says quickly that you can go. It seems that your rhythm matches the curfew code. You move quietly down the narrow lane. Beyond the cafe, you will find a hollowed church, which is lit up by lantern light. Shadows of arched windows dance across the pews, which are covered in rubble. You climb through the broken door, being careful not to step on any broken glass from the rain. In the apse, a charcoal sketch on a brick pillar marks a hidden door. It is a rectangle about knee-high, outlined in faded chalk. You press your palm against the brick and trace its shape. The chalk feels crisp under your fingers. You kneel and press the embroidered strip against a latch hidden behind a loose stone. It opens like a secret you just whispered. When you go inside, you are welcomed by the warm light of the candles and the smell of damp earth. A narrow stair goes downwards. You go down the stairs, and with each step you take, it sounds like you are asking a question. Joke 3 winks at you. Secret passages apparently come with their own dramatic sound effects. You arrive at the bottom and go into a basement that is lined with people dressed in cloaks, looking at maps and radios. A man in oil-stained overalls gives you 2 thin envelopes. He flips a switch, and the radio starts to play Morse code. A conversation between London and Warsaw that is happening far away. He says those codes are used to plan supply drops behind enemy lines. You say thank you quietly and put the envelopes in your coat. I'm amazed at how light they are. A woman wearing threadbare trousers and a muddy shawl leans forward to look at the collars of your coat. Is it safe? She asks quietly. You touch the edge of your scarf and see a hidden pattern of flowers. She nods and moves to one side, and behind her there is a table covered in brooches. Each brooch hides a microfilm capsule containing lists of collaborators. There's a rumor going around that some women sold fake brooches to find out which spies were working for both sides. You make your coat smooth and move quickly past the table into a narrow corridor with clay pots on the walls. Each pot contains a candle that is rolled up and used to send signals by moonlight to Allied aircraft. You pick up a candle and feel its waxy cylinder slip warm between your fingers. An engineer who has a particular political bias explains that candles work as signals to show the names of the drop zones. Historians still can't agree on whether it was better to use candles or radio messages to save lives. You put the candle in your pocket and climb back up the spiral stairs. Outside the church, the morning light filters through broken glass, making the courtyard look a bit dull. You breathe in deeply and wipe the dew off your coat sleeve. The truck that brought you here is waiting around the corner. You rush towards it. There are stalls that have been broken in the past, and there's a man playing the accordion alone, but not very well. You throw him a coin, and he nods, smiling. You imagine his tune echoing across the fields of resistance as you climb aboard the flatbed truck. The car moves forward, the the tires making a quiet noise as they go over the gravel. You press your packages against your chest and stare at the church steeple in the mist. Beneath the city, someone is sleeping, unaware of the network of tunnels under their town. Close your eyes and let the movement calm your mind. Each message you carry is like a spark in the dark. Each delivery makes people more hopeful, helps them escape, and gives them a chance to survive. In the quiet hum of wheels on stone, you can feel the resistance pounding through your veins. You step onto a dusty road under a very hot sun, the air full of the smell of diesel and overripe fruit. Trucks painted army green pass in a haze, their canvas covers hiding the people inside. Alongside the road, a small group of girls wait, nervous, with their shadows drawn tight against their feet. A sergeant in a khaki uniform checks names against a clipboard, calling each person in turn with the voice of someone ticking boxes rather than calling people to life. A young woman in a plain cotton dress moves from foot to foot, holding a bag that seems far too light for a journey. Her name is shouted next. She takes a step forward, looking down at the ground. You look where she is looking and see a set of wooden steps. They lead up into the back of a truck. She goes in without thinking and disappears into the dark space behind the flap. Time to face the facts. In the late 1930s, the Japanese army set up a system of concentration camps across Asia, where they forced many women from Korea, China, the Philippines, and other countries to work. Many were told they would work in restaurants or factories, but ended up in brothels. The sergeant points to the truck and gestures for you to get in. Inside, the air is hot and close, and it smells of dried sweat and straw mats. Wooden benches line each side, filled with silent passengers who are mostly just teenagers. You sit near the back next to a girl. She is holding a paper fan with painted cranes on it. She opens it quickly and starts to fan herself. The gesture felt oddly regal in the small space. One of the older women offers you a canteen. The water tastes a bit like tin and salt. She says she came from a fishing village and had been promised a job in a textile mill. Instead, she ended up in a barracks where soldiers queued at her door from sunrise until midnight. Her words hit the silence like stones. The truck suddenly moves forward. Outside, the countryside is passing by quickly. Rice paddies shiny in the sun. Children wave to us from a dirt path. Laundry that is tied to bamboo poles. The women start to chat quietly about how they were recruited. A friend who arranged travel. A government official promising to keep your pay the same. An aunt who said it would be safer in the city. You can see the connection between these two things. Each person trusted someone they knew. At a checkpoint, armed guards in field caps wave the convoy through. One stops to give a soldier on the back of a truck a folded note. The soldier puts it in his shirt pocket without reading it. You catch a glimpse of the handwriting, which is tiny and neat. A message so small that it could be hidden under a fingernail. Fringe Whisperer says, sometimes ordinary people hide warnings or escape routes in things like cigarette packs or letters that look like receipts. The road narrows into a winding track through thick jungle. Bamboo bushes rub against the truck's sides, and the smell of damp earth fills the air. The girl with the paper fan quietly sings a folk song, which matches the sound of the engine. The tune feels like it's wrapped around you, like a memory you share. You might think about charging people to come to this free concert, but you don't say anything. The truck stops suddenly in a compound surrounded by barbed wire. A wooden gate opens to show low buildings with tin roofs. Soldiers are relaxing in the shade, smoking and laughing. A commanding officer walks quickly forward, his boots making a loud noise as they hit the gravel on the ground. He tells everyone to get off the bus and line up. In the main hall, a clerk sits at a desk and writes down each name in a book. He gives out room numbers and rules for how to behave. The list includes things like how many people can work at any one time, when they have to be off the streets and regular health checks. A nurse in a starched uniform passes each woman, giving her a small cotton bag containing toiletries, a bar of soap, a comb, and a thin towel. You run your fingers over the rough fabric of the bag. It is light, and this is more important than any welcome. You are shown into a small room with 2 beds, separated by a low shelf. A light bulb hangs from the ceiling, swinging a little in the air from an open window. Outside, there's a courtyard between the barracks and the mess hall. Soldiers cross it in leisurely arcs, rifles casually slung over their shoulders. In the evening, the building is filled with the sound of boots on wooden floors. A whistle signals the start of the night shift. Girls leave their rooms wearing the clothes they were given that morning. Their hair is combed into tidy waves. Their faces had just enough powder on them to hide how tired they were. The air smells of talcum powder and cigarettes. You're taken into a long corridor with doors on it. Each door has a number on it. A soldier will be sent in a group at a set time. You nod, holding the cotton bag like it's a lucky charm. Joke, 2 flickers. You could start a betting pool on which number gets called first, but you don't say. This is just another fact. Experts still don't know exactly how many comfort women there were. They think it could be between 50,000 and over 200,000. There are not many surviving records because some documents were deliberately destroyed as the war ended. The first knock comes quickly. You move to one side as a woman opens the door to greet her first visitor. A radio plays a love song down the hall. You can barely hear the words over the sounds of footsteps and quiet voices. The girl with the paper fan walks past, putting the fan into her waistband like a knife. Later, you find yourself on the back step of the barracks, looking out into the dark beyond the fence. The jungle is full of night insects, making a steady, unchanging noise. Think about the villages where these girls are from. The families are waiting, not knowing what is going to happen. The roads that led here were not marked. You wonder who might still be searching for them. A guard comes up to us, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. He tells you it's time to go back inside. You nod and follow the light, which is guiding you back to the numbered doors. The compound gets into its nightly routine. You can hear footsteps, whispers, and the soft scratching of a gramophone. You lie on your bed and look at the cracks in the ceiling. The air has a slight smell of soap and rust. The girl with the fan is sleeping next to you, breathing evenly. You close your eyes and listen to the insects outside. Their song makes the area around you feel peaceful. Joke 3 quietly drifts through your mind. If survival were money, every woman here would be rich. You let the image fade into the dark, but you can't stop thinking about those painted cranes fanning cool air in a hot, crowded truck. You step off a narrow stone curb into the bright lights of a Paris night. The street lamps light up the smooth cobblestones, and the bright lights of a jazz club between bakeries reflect in them. The notes of the saxophone rise into the air, moving towards the iron balconies where shadows lean and watch. The air smells of tobacco, perfume, and rain that has been sitting in the gutters. A doorman in a black coat nods and waves you inside. The club is dimly lit, with round tables covered in red cloth and a mist of cigarette smoke drifting above them. A woman wearing a green satin gown stands in front of a microphone, her voice sounding smooth and smoky. People in the bar move their chairs to and from the table, and their wine glasses reflect the light. Time to face the facts. During the German occupation of Paris, a brothel was officially run. Some of the best-known prostitutes were visited by Wehrmacht officers, Gestapo agents, and black market prophets. They were used as both pleasure houses and places where information was collected. You make your way through the crowd to a side door marked privy. Inside, there's a narrow corridor that smells a bit like lavender water. Behind a half-closed door, A woman in a silk robe is relaxing on a chaise. She had a half-smoked cigarette in her hand. She points to a glass ashtray and says, "Use this if you need a place to put your cigarette." You light a cigarette and lean against the doorframe. She tells you that the man in the corner of the club, who is big and shaven-headed, is a police informant. He listens more than he drinks, and he never smiles. She warns you to be careful what you say around him. You nod, holding the cigarette between your fingers. I can think of one joke about putting eavesdropping on a CV, but you should keep it to yourself. A waiter quietly tells us that a table at the back is reserved for a German colonel who likes to play cards all night. People say he bets on things like where the soldiers are moving, where supplies are, and even names. Fringe Whisper says some women share this information with the resistance, passing it on in love letters. You go back to the main room and see the colonel arrive. His boots are shiny and his coat is lined with silver braid. He nods quickly to the doorman and walks to the table. You see two men following him into the building. One is tall and has a limp. The other has a scar running from his ear to his collar. They sit close together, looking around the room. You sit down at the bar and order a beer. The bartender pours slowly, watching the colonel over the rim of the glass. Without looking at you, he says that Gestapo agents have been making surprise visits to brothels in Paris. They're looking for resistance couriers and hidden radio transmitters. Historians still don't agree on how well these sweeps worked, given that people were good at hiding. The band then plays a lively swing piece. Dancers fill the small floor, skirts twirling, shoes tapping in time. You enjoy your drink and let the music take your mind off things for a while. Joke 2 floats up. You think about telling the bartender that swing music might be the best espionage cover ever invented, but you simply smile. In the corner, a man in a gray suit takes out a pack of cigarettes and offers you one. As you take your drink, he quickly slides a folded napkin under your hand. You look down and see a series of numbers written in pencil. You put it into your sleeve and keep your face expressionless. The singer's voice goes low for the last part of the song, and everyone in the room becomes silent. She closes her eyes and holds the last note in the air until it disappears into the smoke. The applause grows louder and louder, and the crowd is clearly enjoying it. The colonel claps once, then leans towards his friends and speaks quickly in German. You go to the toilet and lock the door. You unfold the napkin. Location information. A small star marks a location north of the city. You remember it, then tear the napkin into tiny pieces and throw them away. The mirror over the sink shows your face lit up by the soft light of the lamp. You smooth your hair and put on some fresh lipstick. When you go back to the main room, you will see that the colonel's table is covered with playing cards and stacks of francs. The man with the scar looks at the door. The woman in the green dress has left the stage, and a trumpet player has taken her place. The trumpet player plays notes that are loud and bright. A waiter gives you a piece of music. Inside is a line of French lyrics. Suelo en el oiseau, son ofsu. Under the moon, the bird flies away. This is a signal. You finish your drink, thank the bartender, and go outside. The street is quieter now, the rain stopping just long enough for the music to fill the night. You walk towards the sun, your heels clicking against the cobblestones. At the edge of the river, a man in a woolly hat is waiting by the shadows of a bridge. You give him a small matchbox. This is the signal that you have passed on tonight's message. He nods once and disappears into the darkness. You turn back towards the club, its bright lights shining into the street like a beacon. Behind its walls, people will carry on playing games all night long. Joke 3 is still on your mind. Paris may be known for its wine and music, but its true power comes from its secrets. You let the idea stay with you as you leave the river. Your path is lit by the soft glow of lamplight and the distant sound of a trumpet. You wake up feeling cold and wet. The medic on duty pulls back a canvas flap. letting in the thin gray light of morning. Outside, puddles shine in the marks left by the ambulance wheels. The air smelt of coal smoke and something else, something sharper. You can taste a slight medicinal flavor at the back of your throat. The infirmary tent is full of people. There are folding cots on each wall. The thin mattresses on the cots are sagging because there are feverish bodies lying on them. A nurse in a starch cap moves quickly between them, balancing a tray of mugs filled with cloudy liquid. She puts one down next to you and tells you that it is quinine water, which is bitter but good for you. You take a sip and feel its strong flavor on your tongue. Time to face the facts. By 1942, both the Axis and Allied forces were fighting an invisible war against diseases that had existed for a long time. In many places where the war was fought, penicillin was rare or not available. Soldiers had to use older treatments like sulfur drugs, quinine, and mercury ointments, each of which had their own risks. The nurse checks your pulse, looking worried. She writes something in a book and signals for the doctor, who arrives with a battered leather bag. He asks questions in a short, sharp way about dizziness, skin sores, and muscle aches. His eyes are tired but searching. You answer carefully, knowing that every symptom can change what happens to you. A young woman sits at a nearby cot, holding her stomach and sweating. She is breathing quickly and in short bursts. A medic kneels beside her and tells her he is there to help. He puts a blood pressure cuff around her arm. She squeezes her eyes shut and quietly says a prayer. The doctor turns back to you and uncaps a tin of gray paste. It has a sharp, metallic smell that makes you flinch. He spreads it onto a piece of linen and tells you to put on your skin twice a day. Fringe Whisperer says, "This medicine contains mercury, an old treatment that is just as dangerous as the infection it's meant to cure." Across the tent, a soldier sits on the edge of his bed, scratching his wrists. His uniform shirt is loose, and his sleeves are rolled up to show pale scars. A medic gives him a small packet of powder and tells him to mix it with tea. He makes a face and says it tastes like rusty nails. You think of a joke. Maybe they should list that on the ingredients, but you swallow it down. The nurse comes back with a small wooden box. In the box, there are condoms, antiseptic wipes, and a small piece of paper with instructions. She puts it on your lap and says, "This is your personal protection kit." Her voice sounds quick, but her eyes look a bit sad. You thank her, holding the worn paper sheet. You hear two orderlies talking quietly near the supply shelves. They speak of an outbreak spreading to a nearby regiment, forcing the closure of several places where people can eat and drink. The military will not include these closures in its official reports. Historians still disagree about how many of these cases were kept secret to protect the morale of the troops. A bell rings outside, letting guests know it's time for the morning check-in. You put on your coat and go out into the rain. The campground smells of damp wool and diesel. A line of women is walking toward a small shed. Medical officers are there to record the daily health status of the women. You join them, the mud sucking at your boots. Inside the shed, a police officer with a clipboard marks your name and notes under treatment. He slides a slip of paper across the desk with your restricted duty order. The print is faded, but you can still read it easily. There are no assignments at the moment. You put it in your pocket and feel how heavy it is. The rain gets weaker as you go towards the mess tent. Soldiers walk in carrying tin trays. There is steam coming up from cups of tea that have been chipped and bowls of porridge that are watery. You are sitting at a table in a corner. You are using a spoon. A soldier nearby coughs into his sleeve, his shoulders hunched. You look at the medic standing in the doorway, who pretends not to notice. Your breakfast is interrupted by a lot of noise from outside. A jeep stops suddenly, and two men carrying a stretcher get out. They're carrying a person who is hurt and is covered in a blanket. The medics rush them into the medical tent. You see the girl's face, as pale as paper, with her lips cracked. A wet piece of hair is on her cheek. You follow at a distance as the medical team work on her. The doctor asks for more sulfur powder. A nurse cuts away the girl's sleeve to reveal angry red marks going up her arm. Her pulse is weak and her breath is short. The mercury ointment is left on the table. You take a step back and the air feels thicker than usual. The rain falls gently on the tent roof, mixed with the sound of the girl breathing. Someone puts on a little radio in the corner. There are crackles. Then a voice announces troop movements. You wonder how many other announcements hide smaller hidden emergencies. Later, when you get back to your bed, you take out the personal protection kit. The paper makes a noise as you rub it across your lap. The condoms look thin and almost brittle. The antiseptic wipes smell so strong that they could even sting your nose. You put the kit away again and use a ribbon from a supply crate to seal it. Joke, two thoughts come to mind. You think of calling it a survival gift basket, but the humor quickly disappears. It has stopped raining outside. You walk towards the edge of the camp where washing lines hang under wet uniforms. Some of the socks are the wrong color or pattern. A line of tin buckets sits half full of rainwater. You put your fingers in and feel the cold water. An orderly passes by with a book of records under his arm. He says that a delivery of penicillin is expected next month if the supply trucks make it through. Until then, we will have to make do with older treatments. There's a strange rumor going around that a French doctor in the city is trying out herbal remedies hidden in tea leaves. You imagine tea becoming the new contraband. Back in a mess tent, the nurse gives you a second cup of tea. The steam makes it hard to see for a moment. You hold it with both hands, feeling its heat seep through. You drink it slowly, feeling the bitter taste and feeling a bit better. You think of 3 jokes. Maybe the tea is the real medicine and the rest is just for show. You smile quietly to yourself before putting the mug down. Outside, camp life continues with people walking around in the mud. The orders were shouted and the engines started up. Inside the infirmary, CS fill and empty. The secret war against disease is still going on. You stand at the doorway for a moment, breathing in the smell of antiseptic and damp earth before going back into the slow, heavy rhythm of another day. You walk along a dirt road with hedges on either side. These used to protect neat gardens, but now they hide weeds and bushes. There's a rooster crowing somewhere, even though it's already sunny. The air smells a bit of laundry soap and smoke from chimneys. You can hear the thud of a wooden pole being put down ahead of you. A woman wearing a faded apron stands up from her washing and looks at you. Her eyes narrow slightly as she takes in the situation, but then she smiles politely. You walk through the village square where a baker sweeps crumbs from a table into his hand. He nods to greet them, but quickly looks towards 2 older men sitting on a bench. They lean in towards each other when they talk, but they don't speak very loudly. You feel their eyes on you, staying there for longer than is polite. Time to face the facts. During wartime, women who were thought to be spending time with the soldiers of the occupying force often faced accusations, even if there was no proof. Some of them were later humiliated in public after liberation. Their reputations were as bad as their hair. A child tugs at her mother's skirt and whispers something in her ear. The mother tells her to be quiet, but does not look at you again. The market stalls are half empty. They sell things like turnips, apples, and pickled cabbage. One of the stall keepers offers you a coin in exchange for the change, her fingers brushing yours for the briefest second. She looks at the piece of paper in your coat pocket, but says nothing. You stop at the post office to check for mail. The clerk looks through a pile of envelopes and shakes his head. He says he won't be writing any letters today, but his eyes look at you as if he's trying to figure out if you're telling the truth. Joke one makes you feel a bit uncomfortable. You could start writing letters to yourself to break the silence, but don't tell anyone. On the walk back, You hear two women talking behind a laundry line. One of them quietly says something about the followers of the camp while they are wringing out a sheet. The other laughs softly, but the sound is more like it's breaking than it is amused. They don't say your name, but their voices get louder as you pass. You keep going at the same speed, as if you can't hear. Outside your small room, you find a wicker basket on the doorstep. Inside, there are 2 loaves of bread, still warm, and a note tied to a piece of butcher's paper. On days when the village seems unkind, you look around, but no one is watching. Fringe Whisper says, there are always a few who offer quiet support. Even when people stop believing in you, you carry on, putting the basket on the table next to your tea leaves. The room smells a little of lavender from the satch, tucked into your bedding. You cut a thick slice from one loaf and eat it plain. Its crust cracks beneath your teeth. Later, you walk to the edge of the fields where laundry flaps on lines that are too short. A man stacking hay stops to watch you. He spits into the grass before going back to his work. You wonder if he looks at you with pity or if he thinks you're up to something. Historians still disagree about whether communities that were at war thought about women in a way that was based on morality, survival, or envy. Near the well, an old woman fills a tin can with water. She tells you quietly that the germs came yesterday and asked about people they didn't know in the village. She says she didn't mention any names. Her hand shakes as she adjusts her scarf, and you think that she is being careful, but it probably cost her something. You thank her and head towards the lane where children play with a hoop and stick. They stop talking as you pass, the hoop rolling into a ditch. One boy gets it without looking at you. The air is full of unspoken rules. Joke, 2 flickers. You imagine telling them you've come to teach them a new game. You let the thought go, but you still gossip. When you get back home, you find an envelope under your door. Inside is a short article from a newspaper about how to rebuild a moral society after a war. The language is formal, and the tone is that of a father. You fold it up and put it between the pages of a notebook that's already full of similar bits of paper. The notebook feels heavier each week. By evening, clouds gather over the rooftops. You light the oil lamp and sit at your table, tearing a stale piece of bread into your soup. Outside, footsteps crunch on gravel, then stop. You freeze, listening. A soft knock follows. It's so faint that it might just be the wind. When you open the door, you see that there is nobody there. But on the step, there's a sprig of rosemary. There's a funny old story going around that says rosemary can protect you from getting sick or being mean to you. You put it behind a bread basket like a lucky charm. Rain begins to pat gently against the shutters, hitting them regularly. You sit back in your chair, holding the soup bowl with your hands. Beyond the storm, the village continues as usual, with washing hung on benches and loaves of bread being baked in brick ovens. You feel both like you belong and like you don't. Joke 3 is a bit less obvious. You could tell the next person who asks that you're just here for the bread, but you don't say it. Instead, you keep it for yourself like the rosemary. As night falls, you open the shutters a little. The rain has made the cobblestones slippery and shiny in the street lamplight. You watch the water make its way between the stones, flowing towards a drain you can't see. When you do that, you feel your own determination. I'm still here and still moving, even though people look at me and say things behind my back. You're sitting at a wooden desk in a dark records office. There's a thin stripe of sunlight coming through a half-drawn curtain. The dust is dancing in it. Outside a church, a bell chimes at noon, its sound echoing against the stone walls of the narrow street. A pile of folders sits next to you. Their edges are worn down from age, and their labels are written in different handwriting. The man in the corner shuffles papers very carefully, like someone who has been doing this for a long time. Time to face the facts. For many years, historians have been trying to work out how many women were forced to work in military brothels during the Second World War. The number is somewhere between tens of thousands and well over 200,000. This is partly because so many records were destroyed before the country was liberated. You open the first file and find a typed list of names. Some of them have birth years, but others only have the most basic details. The girl is from Korea, about 17 years old, and has no family. The ink has faded, but the lines still show the careful precision of a bureaucratic inventory. You trace one line with your fingertip, wondering how far the girl behind it traveled before her name landed here. In another folder, you find a map with lots of red dots on it. Each dot shows a known or suspected station. There's a memo next to the map. It has an official seal on it. It says what supplies are needed. These are soap, linen, quinine, and medical reports. The medical reports should be sent every month. Historians still can't agree on whether these documents show that there was real oversight or if they were just a way to keep the system of exploitation going while making it look like everything was under control. From the other side of the desk, the clerk clears his throat and leans over, pointing to a footnote at the bottom of one page. It says, "More evidence was destroyed on August 1st, 1945 as ordered." He raises his eyebrows, then goes back to his pile of cards. The joke is funny. You imagine adding evidence eraser as a wartime job, but you put it away. There's a box under the desk that is labeled unverified testimonies. You slide it towards you and lift the lid. Inside are sheets of onion skin paper with faint pencil writing on them. The handwriting is uneven. Some parts are neat and others are messy, as if it was written quickly. You scan fragments taken at night, promise sewing work, not allowed to write home. The words hang in the air like the remnants of a half-heard confession. You stop at a letter written in ink, so pale it is almost ghostly. It tells of a journey from a fishing village to a foreign barracks, of work that was never work, of illness that was left untreated until it left scars. There is no signature, only the closing. "Please tell that we were real." On a different table, there's a book with cracked leather covers. The dates run in tidy order for months, then suddenly stop. The last entry is just one line. There is no explanation and no figures before the page is left blank. Some officials have said that, as they thought the war was ending, they deliberately left their records incomplete to protect themselves from being asked about them later. The room smells a little of ink and must. You see a small safe in the corner. The door is ajar, and inside there are rolls of microfilm sealed in paper tubes. The clerk says they came from the archives that were taken, but they have not yet been translated. He shrugs and says that some might be copies or nothing at all. He says that historians never agree on what should be kept. You go to the window and pull back the curtain. The street outside is quiet, and the stone is warm from the sun. A bike is leaning against a lamppost. Its wheels are patched and worn. You imagine riding through the city, delivering these testimonies to anyone who will listen. The joke gets louder. You could leave the files in cafe chairs and let curious strangers figure out the history. But, not many people would understand how much they were carrying. On the far wall, a corkboard holds a few old photographs. People stare back at you. Some look serious, while others look like they're laughing. The captions are short. First name, place year. Nothing is said about what happened afterwards. You find yourself thinking about a picture of a young woman with a ribbon tied around her neck. She could be anyone's sister, daughter, or friend. The clerk points to a thin envelope. It is addressed in a fancy European hand. Inside, there's a single sheet that talks about 20 women being moved from one place to another. The location names have been covered up, leaving only black smudges. He shrugs again and says, "This is just typical records that have been kept just long enough to prove they existed, but without the details that matter." There's a calendar on the wall. It is marked with the date April 1st, 1945. The numbers are faded. You imagine the hands that turned those pages once, stopping suddenly at the month when the war began to shift. You wonder how many truths were hidden forever during those weeks. Joke. Maybe April 1945 should be called the month of convenient amnesia, but you let it rest. You close the folders, stack them neatly, and slide the box of testimonies back onto the desk. The air in the room feels heavier now, as if the paper has soaked up all the silence it can hold. Outside, the bell rings again, and its sound follows you into the sunshine. You walk slowly down the narrow street, each step making the echo of unanswered questions. Someone still remembers every name and every red dot on that map. Until we talk about these memories, the numbers will be a problem. You are at a crossroads where the air feels full of possibilities. You can hear the distant sound of soldiers marching past. Two roads go in opposite directions. One goes towards the old front lines. The other goes into a town that has just been occupied. Your boots are covered in mud. Your satchel feels heavier than you remember. The horizon is slightly lit up, as if there are still fires burning. Where the shells landed, you watch smoke drift into the sky at night, turning into violet shadows. Somewhere a dog barks twice and then stops. The air smells of burnt wood and the sweet smell of spring flowers. Time to face the facts. As the front lines moved during the last years of the war, many civilians working with the military had to decide whether to follow the retreating forces or stay behind. Both choices were dangerous. The advancing troops might attack, and the retreating troops might suspect them. A farmer's cart with a skeleton horse pulling it goes past. The driver's eyes meet yours for a second, but then they look away. You see something under the canvas flap of the cart. It's shaped like something you'd find in a farm, but it's too angular to be just farm tools. You imagine it as someone's hastily hidden treasures, secretly passed to the next soldier at the checkpoint. You step into the shade of a tree and watch a pair of women push a pram. The pram is loaded not with a child, but with sacks of flour and a battered kettle. They talk quietly and quickly, and often look over their shoulders at the road. You wonder if they too are deciding which road to take. You have a funny feeling. You think about asking if they're taking passengers, but you don't say anything. A sudden noise from the engine lets you know that a group of vehicles has arrived. Trucks stop at the junction. Engines are idling. A police officer gets out of the first car and looks at a map. His men look carefully at the fields, their eyes showing they're working hard. One of them warns about possible movement by the soldiers in the hills. The officer waves him off and orders the group to split up. Half of them go towards the city, and the other half go towards the forest road. A young soldier stops by the last truck and lights a cigarette. He offers you one without saying anything. You accept the tension between you as a temporary agreement. The smoke tastes of damp tobacco and tiredness. He looks at your bag and says quietly, "Whatever you do, don't look back." His words settle in your mind like a final instruction. When the trucks move on, the crossroads is quiet again. You drag your boot across the dirt, making a shallow line between the two paths. Fringe Whisperer says, some people in these moments simply walked straight into the fields, avoiding the road entirely, and hoping to find a safer route at night. You check how heavy your bag is. Inside are a few coins, a loaf of bread, a water flask, and a packet of folded papers you've kept for weeks. The papers have names and dates on them that could be dangerous if they get into the wrong hands. Historians still can't agree on whether it was better to hide, destroy, or hand over these documents. You hear a noise in the hedge. A boy no older than 12 steps out, holding a bag that is almost as big as he is. He looks up at you with clear, defiant eyes and asks if the road to the city is safe. You hesitate, then you tell him the truth. You don't know. He nods, adjusts the strap on his bag, and walks towards the dim, fading lights of the city. The sun goes down, and the golden light falls on the fields. You think about the people you've left behind and those you might meet in the future, depending on the path you choose. Joke, two tugs at you. You could toss a coin to make the decision, but you know this choice deserves more than luck. In the distance, the sound of boots crunching gravel gets closer. You can see figures moving together in a line, their shapes changing as they go up the hill. The sight makes you more determined. If they are retreating troops, you have minutes to slip away before questions start. You take a step towards the road that goes into the forest. The air is cooler there, and it smells of pine and damp soil. The tree canopy muffles the distant sounds of conflict, replacing them with the sound of snow melting from the branches. You run faster as it gets darker. Half an hour later, you arrive at a small group gathered around a fire. They're looking at the flames, which make their faces glow with orange light. One man looks up and scans you for a moment, as if he's trying to remember where he's seen you. When he says, "We leave at dawn," you feel a mix of relief and fear. You sit down next to the fire and put your hand around it. The satchel rests on your lap. I know how heavy it is now. The choice has been made, but the road ahead is empty. This joke has three surfaces. You think about telling the group you took the scenic route, but you keep it to yourself, letting the warmth of the fire speak for you. The sky has turned a deep shade of blue. Stars shine through the cold light, steady against the changing glow of the fire. You lean back on your elbows, listening to the low sound of people talking and the occasional pop of sap in the flames. The war is moving on in both directions, but for tonight, you've chosen where you're going to be. You're standing in the cool marble hallway of a military courthouse. You can barely hear your footsteps in the quiet early morning. Outside, the street is still wet from last night's rain, and the clouds hang low over the rooftops like a lid, keeping the city quiet. The air is filled with the faint smell of polish and old paper. Inside the main chamber, there are rows of wooden benches that face a long table covered with a green cloth. In the middle of the table, there is a stack of folders. Each folder has a number written on it in black ink. There are guards in uniform at the back doors with their hands behind their backs. A clock ticks somewhere out of sight. Each second felt like it took forever. Time to face the facts. After the war, some military courts looked into whether the organized exploitation of women in occupied territories could be considered a war crime. While a few trials resulted in convictions, many were dismissed because the court did not have the right to hear the case or because there was not enough evidence. A woman in a plain gray dress is sitting at the witness table, hands folded tightly in her lap. She looks towards the gallery, but doesn't see any familiar faces. Her hair is neatly pinned, but a loose strand of hair is falling down her cheek. A translator quietly says something to her. The prosecutor stands up and starts reading a statement. He speaks in a careful way, thinking about what he says first. He describes the rules set by the occupying forces, the creation of controlled stations, and the documented accounts of women forced to serve under threat. Historians still can't agree on whether these presentations were meant to show the truth or to fit it neatly within legal boundaries that could be managed and contained. From the defense table, an officer in a smart uniform leans back in his chair, arms crossed. He looks at the prosecutor with a slight smile, his boots shiny. The man and his counsel, who is in his middle years and wears glasses with wire rims, writes notes in a small book. The sound of the pen scratching on the paper is louder than it should be. The first exhibit is brought forward, a set of rules that has been typed and stamped with an official seal. The clerk puts them in front of the judges, who look at them without saying anything. You can see the red ink of one of the clauses. Make sure the troops have enough health protection. The language is clinical and cold. You think of a joke. Maybe they should have listed morality alongside mosquito control, but they didn't say this. The witness is asked to describe how she was recruited. Her voice shakes as she explains how she was told she would work as a seamstress, but was sent to a barracks where soldiers came to her door. She stops, holding her hands tightly together. The translator speaks into the chamber, and her words hang in the air like fine dust. Another witness, a medic who worked in a military clinic, is called to the stand. He says he did weekly checkups when he was told to and wrote down the results in books that were later burned. He remembers at least 2 women who died from infections because the supplies weren't given to them. The judges listen, ready to write, but not yet. Fringe Whisper says some courts relied heavily on medical personnel for testimony, not out of sympathy, but because their accounts seemed neutral and scientific. The truth is, being neutral was rare. The defense starts to ask questions. The investigators ask the witnesses questions, looking for any differences in their answers. They question the lack of written orders and challenge memories that are unclear or distorted over time. One lawyer says that it was common for people to sign up for voluntary service. The air in the room feels cooler. You watch the woman in gray move in her seat. She looks at the courtroom floor, where you can still see the slight marks made by many pairs of shoes. You wonder if she is imagining herself walking out of the room instead of answering another question. Joke. 2 brushes against your mind. You might think that the defense has confused this trial with a theater audition, but the seriousness of the situation stops them from saying anything. A recess is called. People spill into the hallway where the sunlight now shines through the high windows. Small groups of people are talking, with journalists writing notes, people with aides whispering, and officers lighting cigarettes. A young waiter gives you a cup of weak coffee in a broken mug. The cold, wet air feels like it's burning your face. When the court reconvenes, the lawyers will give their closing statements. The prosecutor says that justice may be delayed, but it is never forgotten. The defense says that we should be careful about setting examples that could make the military look bad. Both sides are based on history, but from different points of view. The judges leave to talk about it. The room is very quiet. The witness in gray stays at her table, tapping her fingers gently on the wood. The officer opposite her leans back, arms crossed, looking at something far away. When a jury's decision is finally announced hours later, it comes as no surprise. He was found guilty of some charges, but not others. The sentences are shorter than the stories would suggest. The judges stand up. The guards step forward, and the moment changes into movement. You leave the courthouse and find yourself on a street that's been washed clean by the morning's rain. People walk quickly by, holding their umbrellas up against the wind. You carry a slip of paper with the day's outcome in your pocket. It feels too light for the truth. Joke makes you think about 3 things. You could almost believe that justice comes with a ration card because it's so rarely given out, but you keep it for yourself. The wind carries the faint sound of a distant bell. You walk towards it, your footsteps echoing off the wet stone, thinking about the evidence that will never be seen in a courtroom and the witnesses who will never be called. Some verdicts are remembered, you know. You wake up in the early hours, the air feeling heavy and still. The barracks are quiet, except for the sound of someone turning in their bed. Outside, the wind moves a loose shutter, and the faint sound of tapping carries through the darkness. You look closely at the faint lines of shadow on the ceiling. Sleep tries to sneak in, but you can't let it. The blanket over you is made of rough wool, which is coarse enough to prickle your skin. You move to find a comfortable position. Your thoughts wander without you even noticing. People's faces appear and disappear. Some I recognize, some I don't. Each person leaves a small memory behind them. The silence makes every memory seem stronger, as if it's like smoke slowly filling the room. Time to face the facts. Many people who were exploited sexually during wartime said they had long-term psychological problems, including nightmares, panic attacks, and what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. At the time, there were no official names for these conditions, only vague references to nervous strain or melancholia. You close your eyes and try to forget the past. A sudden sound, a kettle clattering in the kitchen below, makes your eyes snap open again. Your pulse starts to beat faster and then slows down when you realize what is happening. You might think of a joke. You could almost wake yourself up just by sneezing. Someone makes a noise in their sleep in the next cot. You can barely make out what they're saying because the words are all mixed up, but the tone sounds really urgent. You wonder what they see when they're not looking. The room smells a bit of soap, damp clothes, and the ghost of last night's meal. You turn onto your side and look at the thin curtain that separates your bed from the narrow aisle. Your hand reaches for the small tin you keep by your pillow. There's a photograph of a group of people smiling at a summer picnic inside. The corners of the photograph are creased. You study it until you can't tell the lines apart, trying to remember a time that still feels safe. Historians still can't agree on whether keeping these memories made things easier or worse for the people who survived. When the first ray of sunlight filters through the cracks in the shutter, you rise quietly. Your feet find the old slippers under the cot, the ones with a threadbare patch at the heel. The floorboards feel cool under your feet as you walk across to the basin in the corner. The water in the picture is cold enough to hurt your fingertips. You splash your face and breathe in sharply. In the mirror, you can see the shadows under your eyes. You smooth your hair, then tie it back with a ribbon you've kept from an old parcel. The movement helps you to breathe more evenly. Downstairs, the kitchen is empty. There's a woman stirring porridge over a low flame. She looks up, smiles a little, and puts an extra bowl on the table. You thank her and sit down. The spoon feels heavy in your hand, but the warmth of the porridge starts to make you feel warm all over. A young man comes in, his coat still wet from the night. He says the streets are quiet and the fog is thick over the river. He pours you a cup of tea and puts it on your table without saying anything. You say thank you quietly and slowly drink your tea. The steam warms your face. We start talking about random things like the price of bread, the lack of lamp oil, and a cat that won't leave the woodpile. These small topics are like pebbles in a stream, providing a stable foundation to stand on. Joke, 2 brushes are used. You could suggest the cat run for mayor since it's clearly holding its ground better than most. Later, you walk to the edge of the river. The fog curls low, making it hard to see the other side of the river. The water laps gently at the stones, and a gull calls somewhere in the distance. You close your eyes and listen. The air feels cool and damp to your skin, but it feels cleaner than the air inside your thoughts. Fringe Whisperer says, some people who lived through the war kept walking the same routes they had used in fear. They did this over and over again, as if they were taking back control of the area. You are now following one of these paths. You walk over the gravel with your boots crunching. When you get back, the day will already be starting. The kitchen is full of noise as people chat and cook, and the delicious smell of bread baking wafts through the house. You stop in the doorway and listen to the usual noise. Joke 3 hovers. You could say this smells like courage in loaf form, but instead you just smile and take a seat at the long table. The warmth of the bread, the sound of voices, and the noise of cutlery become a quiet comfort for the hours ahead. The shadows in your mind are still there, but for now they are at the edges, blurred by the light coming through the window. Right now, you can relax and stop worrying about the time. You go into the clinic's main room. Its whitewashed walls are a bit dirty from the smoke from the coal stove. The air smells of disinfectant, boiled cloth, and the faint metallic smell of surgical instruments. A row of wooden chairs lines one wall. Their seats are polished by the many people who have sat on them. Outside, the wind makes the bare branches knock against the window panes. The receptionist, A middle-aged man wearing a loose vest asks for your name and writes it down carefully in a book. His pen makes a quiet noise as it moves across the paper. He gives you a small numbered token and tells you to wait until it's time to reveal the facts. After the war, many women who had been kept in military brothels went to get medical help for injuries and infections they had not been treated for, as well as the long-term effects of the abuse they had suffered. Official clinics often offered only basic services, while private treatments, which were not regulated, ranged from experimental hormone injections to crude surgeries. On the far side of the room, a young woman holds a hot water bottle against her stomach. A grandmotherly figure sits next to her, knitting and keeping time with the coughs of a man in a corner. You find an empty chair and sit down, feeling the weight of the token in your hand. A nurse in a gray coat appears at the doorway, calling 2 numbers ahead of yours. Her voice is quick, but she looks at each patient for a moment longer than is required by the rules. You notice she wears sturdy boots with scuffed toes, which are practical for long hours on her feet. When it's your turn, you go with her into a small examination room. The window is covered in fog, making it hard to see outside. She gestures for you to sit on the wooden chair next to the desk. The doctor, who has a narrow face and silver hair, leaves through a pile of patient notes before looking up. First, he will ask you how long the pain has lasted, if you have had a fever, and if you have noticed any changes since your last visit. You answer carefully, knowing that the answers you give might affect the treatment you receive. One joke will make you laugh. You could tell him that the only thing that has really changed is the size of his waiting list, but you don't say anything. He listens with a stethoscope that smells a little of alcohol, the cold bell pressed against your back. He writes a note, then gets a small bottle of pale liquid from a drawer. He says it's a new, popular hormone supplement, but it can have side effects. You nod, not sure if the offer is a kind gesture or a trick. Fringe Whisper says that some clinics tested treatments on patients who were in a vulnerable position after the war, but didn't properly explain the risks. Historians still debate whether these experiments were meant to heal people or to collect data. The nurse prepares the injection, her hand steady as she swabs your arm. The prick is sharp but brief. She puts a small square of gauze over the spot and tapes it down. Then she gives me a piece of paper with instructions on it, including a list of foods to avoid. You scan it, noticing that half the suggestions are almost impossible to follow when there aren't enough food coupons left. In the corner, a cabinet stands slightly ajar, revealing neatly stacked brown bottles with handwritten labels. The nurse sees you looking at them and quietly tells you about their morphine ampoules. These are locked and safe, but sometimes people sell them illegally. She says in certain alleyways, 1 ampoule can fetch enough to buy a week's worth of bread. She takes you back to the reception area where a young boy gives you a boiled sweet from his pocket. You thank him, unwrapping it carefully. The sugar is coarse, and you can taste a mint flavor. The joke is too obvious. You think about telling him it's the best medicine today, but you just smile. Outside, the cold air feels like it's biting your cheeks. You walk past the back alley where 2 men in woolly hats are leaning against the wall. One of them catches your eye and nods towards a box at his feet. The smell of strong alcohol fills the air when he lifts the lid. Among the bottles, you spot a few of those morphine ampoules, their labels hidden under strips of paper. You keep walking, your pulse getting faster. If you go a little further down the street, you will find a small herbalist shop that is lit up at night. Inside, shelves are lined with jars of dried leaves and roots. The shopkeeper offers you a tin of chamomile, telling you it will help you sleep. You buy it and put it in your bag. There's a strange rumor going around that some people are adding a pinch of powdered valerian to their chamomile tea to make their dreams heavier. By the time you get to your room, the sky has turned a deep shade of blue. You light the oil lamp and put the tea tin on the table. The gauze on your arm might itch a little where the injection went in. You boil water, spoon in the chamomile, and watch it steaming up slowly. Joke 3 floats by. You could tell someone you're brewing bravery by the cup, but you let it pass without saying anything. As you drink the tea, you feel the warmth spreading from your throat down to your chest. The cold and the stinging in your arms start to disappear. You lean back in your chair and listen to the sound of the tap in the sink. In the distance, a church bell chimes. The morphine ampoules, the hormones that haven't been tested yet, and the secret talk about selling them illegally on the black market. All of it is forgotten for now. You focus on the small things that make you feel good. The way steam fills the air and the quiet promise of rest that might finally follow. The morning trains pull into the station. Their brakes make a loud noise, and a little bit of steam comes off them. The platform has a musty, smoky smell like damp coats and coal. People move forward in a line, each holding a paper ticket or a piece of permission slip, looking at the inspectors. You keep your bag close to your body, feeling the creases in the papers inside. A conductor in a navy cap asks people to get on the ship. Passengers rush towards the open carriage doors, their boots clicking against the wet boards. You step into a compartment with wooden benches that are shiny from being used for so long. A young soldier puts his bag on the luggage rack and sits down in the seat next to you. His uniform is rumpled, but his boots are shiny because he has recently polished them. Time to face the facts. After the war, many people who had been forced to work during the war, including those who had been made to work in military brothels, had a difficult time getting home. Some of them traveled under false names to avoid being stigmatized or questioned by officials, while others carried fake documents provided by aid groups or friendly locals. The train suddenly starts moving, the wheels on the tracks making a regular, steady sound. You look out of the window as the city becomes smaller and smaller, with rows of closed houses, laundry hanging between them, and children waving from the roofs. In the distance, a factory chimney sends up thin, gray smoke. Across the aisle, an elderly woman opens a wicker basket and takes out a bundle wrapped in cloth. She peels back the paper to reveal boiled eggs, rye bread, and a twist of salt. She offers you half of an egg, the yellow bit against the dark background. You thank her as you bite into its soft, chalky texture. Joke 1 goes by. You could tell her it's the best dining car in Europe, but you just smile. A conductor appears and quickly checks the papers. You give him your travel permit, and he looks closely at the stamp on it. He pauses, then nods and moves on. When you feel better, your chest feels less tight. The soldier on the other side hums a tune quietly, something with a rhythm that goes up and down. He sees you looking at him and says it's an old song from his village. He asks you where you're going, and you give the most vague answer you can. He nods without pressing. At the next stop, a woman wearing a Red Cross armband gets on the bus. She has a bag of pamphlets with her. She hands you one, and on the front it says Rebuilding Lives, Finding Work. There is a section on how women who have been forced to leave their homes can get help to recover. Historians still can't agree on whether these programs were real support or just a way to teach people a different way of thinking. Out of the window, there were fields that stretched as far as the eye could see, with the occasional cottage or line of trees here and there. Crows fly over a plowed field, their dark wings flashing in the bright sunlight. You rest your head against the window frame, feeling the vibration through your body. The soldier offers you a boiled sweet from small tin. The peppermint flavor is strong, and it clears the smoke from your throat. You take a mouthful of it, and the sugar feels rough on your tongue. Fringe Whisperer says that some aid workers use sweets as a quiet way to show that they would not ask any questions when they met survivors on the move. At midday, the train slows for a stop in the countryside. The platform is quiet, just a few villagers with baskets of apples and jars of pickled beets. The air has a slight smell of wood smoke and damp leaves. A boy runs alongside the carriage, waving until the train pulls away. The different sections get warmer as the sun gets higher in the sky. Take off your coat and fold it up on your lap. The Red Cross worker moves through the carriage, offering tea from a large flask. The enamel mug keeps your hands warm. You take a sip, and the bitterness of the tannic flavor fills your mouth. The soldier says he won't be there for long. He puts his things together, stands up, and nods towards you. "Safe road," he says simply. You nod back at him and watch him leave the station. Hours later, the train goes round a bend into a valley. You see a group of houses, a church tower, and a narrow river shining in the sun. The conductor announces the final destination in a voice that has become smooth from repetition. You step down onto the platform, which creaks under your weight. People walk quickly to the carts or the footpaths that go into the hills. You take a deep breath. The air feels cool and has a slight smell of pine and smoke from a distance. Joke. After 2 hours, you could tell yourself that the journey home is just a nice break. But the weight in your bag says differently. You walk past the station, a low stone wall on one side, and into a dirt lane lined with bare branches. You walk on the ground, which is covered in frost. At some point, the lane will meet another road. That road will take you to a place of safety or to another crossing. For now, just keep walking. The sound of the train fades, and you are replaced by the quiet rhythm of your own footsteps. The lane gets narrower, the air gets quieter, and the cold gets closer. Joke 3 is good for your brain. You could call this stretch the scenic route to uncertainty, but you didn't say anything, saving your breath for the miles ahead. The sun is going down, lighting up the path with its golden glow. You follow it, taking each step toward a better life. You're standing on the edge of a quiet road where the frost has only just started to thaw. Beyond the hedgerow, there's a group of small farmhouses. Their roofs are covered with tiles of different colors and sizes. The smell of wood smoke drifted from one chimney, carrying the faint sweetness of peat. A chicken makes a noise somewhere, but then it stops. A farmer wearing a woolly hat pushes open a gate and walks towards you. His boots are covered in mud, and he can smell the fresh air. He looks you over, not unkindly, and asks if you're just passing through or if you're looking for work. You tell him you're just passing through, and he nods, as though that answers more than the question. Time to face the facts. After the war, many of those who had been exploited sexually during the war did not want to go back to their hometowns. Some people were afraid of being ashamed, rejected, or hurt, so they looked for work in the countryside under fake names and lived as part of the farming community. The farmer points to a cart in the yard that is full of sacks of potatoes. He says he could use help loading it before the next market run. You go through the gate and take hold of the rough fabric of the first sack. It's heavier than it looks, but you lift it onto the cart, which makes you feel grounded in the present. Joke 1 comes in. You could almost call this a type of resistance training, but don't tell anyone. A woman comes out of the farmhouse carrying a tin of milk. She offers you a cup, the surface of which is still foamy from pouring. The milk is cool and sweet, leaving a thin layer on your tongue. She looks at you for a moment before asking where you've come from. You offer the same unclear answer you gave the soldier on the train. She accepts it without complaining. The work is steady and simple. Lifting, stacking, and wiping mud from the last few potatoes before they are put in the pile. Your hands hurt, but feels real. The farmer hums a tune as he checks the harness on the mule. You know it as a traditional song that you've heard in lots of different countries. The words of this song are known in different villages, but the tune is always the same. By midday, the frost has gone from the yard. You sit on an upturned crate with a piece of bread and a piece of cheese. The farmer's wife puts down a jar of pickled onions. The brine in the jar is sharp enough to sting your eyes. You spear one with the tip of your knife, the sharp edge cutting through the bread's weight. Historians still don't know if working in the countryside was a real escape for women who had to leave their homes, or if it just made it harder for them to start a new life. In the afternoon, a neighbor arrives with a box of apples. She looks at you strangely, but says nothing. Instead, she starts talking about the weather and how much eggs cost. She leaves 2 apples on the crate next to your feet. You thank her, taking a bite. The texture is crispy and breaks in your mouth. Joke 2 rises. You could say it's the crunch of freedom, but you just smile and take it. The cart will be ready by late afternoon. The farmer asks if you want to go with him to the market in the next village. You agree, climbing up next to him on the wooden bench. The road goes up and down between hedges and fields, and the cold wind makes your hair stand on end. The mule's hooves make a regular, steady sound as they hit the hard-packed dirt. As you approach the village, you'll notice the bustle of stalls being set up in the square. A man hangs onions from a beam, a woman puts knitted scarves on display, and children run around a cart of cabbages. The air is full of the delicious smell of roasting chestnuts. You help unload the potatoes, stacking them neatly by the stall. The farmer's hand is filled with coins as the first customers arrive. He gives you a small bag of chestnuts as a thank you, and you can still feel the heat from the fire in their shells. You peel one and eat it. The heat felt too much against your tongue. When a market slows down, farmers ask if you'll stay a few more days. There's still more work to do before the frost sets in for good. You tell them you'll think about it, but deep down you know that the break in your travels sounds tempting. Quirky Whisper says that more than one person has found their new name in a place like this and taken it on as if it had always been theirs. As it gets dark, you ride back to the farm quietly. The mule plods along steadily, the cart rocking gently to and fro. You hold the bag of chestnuts, and the warmth from the nuts starts to seep through the paper into your hands. Joke 3 slips in. You could tell yourself that this is your winter supply of courage, but you let it stay tucked in the bag with the chestnuts. Back at the farmhouse, the lamp in the kitchen window is on. The farmer's wife invites you in for dinner, the delicious smell of stew filling the room. You get off the cart, the boots making a crunching sound on the frosty ground, and start to walk towards the light. For tonight, I'll walk. You sit at a small desk in a room with peeling wallpaper, its faded floral print curling at the seams. Outside, it's raining a bit. The glass went foggy where your breath meets it. The lamp on the desk shines a thin circle of light over the scattered pages in front of you. Some of these letters were never sent. Others are notes you jotted in haste and forgot to finish. Together, they look like a story that is slowly becoming real. The coal stove in the corner clicks softly as it cools. You reach for a cup of tea that has been left for a bit too long, and it is cold and hot all at once. The taste is slightly bitter, which is a sign that it has been sitting for a long time. You take one of the pages and read your own writing, which surprises you because it is messy and rushed. Time to face the facts. After the war, many women spoke up about being forced to have sex to survive, but there was not much that could be done to help them. Lots of accounts were kept in private archives, family trunks, or forgotten drawers, and survived only because someone couldn't bring themselves to throw them away. You turn a page and see the name of a friend written in the margin, circled twice. You remember her voice, which was low and steady, even when the rest of her body was shaking. You feel very sad. You put the first page to one side and take another one from the back of a food ration form. It's a piece of a song, just a few words about a night when the air felt still and the lamps were low. Historians still disagree about whether these scraps can be used as evidence when there is no official record. The window rattles in its frame when the wind is strong. You look out at the narrow street, which is almost empty. There is only one person in sight, a boy carrying a loaf of bread under his coat. He moves quickly, head down against the rain. The joke is funny. You might think bread runs faster than people here, but it fades before reaching your lips. You open a drawer and take out a small tin box. Inside a box of memories, there's a silk ribbon, a theater ticket, and a key without a lock. Each one is important. You hold the key in your hand and wonder if the door it once opened is still there. At the edge of the desk sits a stack of envelopes tied with string. You untie the bundle and skim the top letter. The writing is blurred, as if the writer's hand shook or the paper was wet. It describes a plan to leave for another country, to start again somewhere where no one knows your past. You read it twice before putting it back in the stack. In the distance, church bells start ringing. You could just about hear their echo faintly in the damp air. You put the pages back together, making them into a neat pile, and you make the edges line up and the corners are even. Your hands linger on them, not knowing whether to keep them safe or send them to someone who might use them. Fringe Whisperer says some women hid their stories in recipe books or hymns. They trusted that the words would survive hidden among ordinary things. Maybe that's what you're doing now, choosing to hide instead of facing the end. You light another lamp, which makes the room brighter. The rain outside is now soft and steady. On the street below, a man in a flat cap hurries past with a newspaper tucked under his arm. You think about tomorrow's news and wonder how many stories will be about the people living quietly in places like this. You're startled by a knock at the door. A neighbor brings a loaf wrapped in brown paper. She says the baker had some extra ones and thought you might want one. You thank her and put it on the table next to the tea. The room is filled with the delicious smell of warm bread. Joke also walks past. You could tell her she's just interrupted a meeting of important papers, but you let it go with a smile. The rain gently turns to mist. You strike a match and light the small candle on the desk, its flames swaying in the breeze. You look over the pile of pages one more time, then put them into the tin box and close the lid. The click of metal feels final, but not absolute. You carry the box to the wardrobe and put it on the highest shelf behind a blanket that is folded. It will be safe there for now. The truth can wait until the right eyes are ready to see it. Joke 3 stays quiet. You could tell yourself that history is just waiting for a good filing system, but you keep it tucked away with the rest. You go back to the desk, pick up the loaf that's still warm, and take a piece. The crust is crunchy, the inside soft and steaming. Outside, the street is wet and shiny in the light of the street lamps. In this small room, with bread in your hand and the sound of water coming from the roof, you allow yourself a rare thing. You stop and are quiet. The pages will stay the same, the rain will keep falling, and you will keep going. The rain outside becomes quiet. Each drop makes a quiet sound against the glass. The warm light from the lamp makes the room look a bit blurry. You lean back in your chair, feeling the weight in your shoulders ease off. The air carries the simple comfort of bread cooling on the table, of a kettle just beginning to whistle on the stove. In the quiet, you notice that your breathing is calm and steady. The street outside the window is almost empty. There are only a few shadows moving across the wall. In the distance, a dog barks softly, and then it's quiet. The night is drawing in. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the soft sound of the candle wick and the steady beat of the rain mix together. The outside world may have unfinished business, but here, you are the master of your time. The blanket draped over the back of your chair slips easily around your shoulders. It feels light, like a hand resting gently on your shoulder to make you feel better. You take another slow breath and imagine the first clear morning light breaking over the rooftops, the air fresh and calm. You just need to stay warm and still tonight until you fall asleep. The pages are safe. The rain is kind.